Deep beneath the sands of Egypt, inside chambers that have remained sealed for thousands of years, something waits. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the last surviving wonder of the ancient world, but its true purpose has been hidden from humanity. For generations, we were told it was a tomb, a monument to a pharaoh's ego. But the Sumerian tablets tell a different story, a story that predates Egypt by thousands of years, a story that connects the pyramids to beings who came from the stars, the Anunnaki, gods who walked among men, beings of immense knowledge and power, who shaped human civilization before vanishing into myth. According to ancient Sumerian texts, these entities did not simply disappear. They left something behind. Something so powerful, so dangerous, that it had to be sealed away from the world. The pyramids were not tombs. They were vaults, designed to contain what the Anunnaki could not destroy. For over a century, archaeologists have explored every chamber, every shaft, every hidden corridor inside the Great Pyramid. They have measured its dimensions with laser precision. They have mapped its internal structure down to the millimeter. Yet there are spaces that remain unopened, voids detected by modern technology that have never been accessed, chambers that the ancient builders went to extraordinary lengths to conceal. What lies inside these sealed spaces? What did the Anunnaki lock away before they departed Earth? The Sumerian tablets provide answers that challenge everything we thought we knew about human history. They speak of technologies that should not have existed in the ancient world. They describe knowledge that took modern science millennia to rediscover. They reveal a relationship between humanity and these cosmic visitors that goes far deeper than mere worship. The tablets tell us that the Anunnaki created us, that they altered our very DNA to serve their purposes, and when their work on Earth was complete, they sealed away the tools of creation itself. Tonight we follow the evidence from the clay tablets of Sumer to the limestone blocks of Giza. We examine what ancient texts reveal about the true function of the pyramids. We explore why these structures align with such precision to celestial bodies. We investigate the chambers that remain sealed and what technologies might detect within them. This is not a story of pharaohs and burial rites. This is the story of what the Anunnaki left behind, and why they ensured it would remain hidden until humanity was ready to understand. The journey begins over 5,000 years ago, in the cradle of civilization, where the first written words were pressed into clay by hands that had learned from gods. If you find these ancient mysteries compelling, consider subscribing to this channel. Each week, we explore the evidence that challenges conventional history. From Sumerian tablets to megalithic structures, from ancient astronaut theories to suppressed archaeological discoveries. Hit subscribe now so you do not miss the next investigation. And if you are here for deep sleep, allow your mind to drift as we journey through 5 millennia of hidden history. Let the story carry you into rest. Now, let us begin in the land between two rivers, where human civilization first emerged under the watchful eyes of beings from beyond our world. 5,000 years before the birth of Christ, in the fertile valley between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a civilization emerged that would lay the foundation for all human culture to follow. The Sumerians appeared seemingly overnight in southern Mesopotamia, bringing with them sophisticated knowledge of agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, and written language. No gradual development, no primitive beginnings. They arrived on the stage of history fully formed, with systems of governance, religious structures, and technological capabilities that would not be matched for thousands of years. Modern archaeology struggles to explain this sudden emergence. The Sumerians themselves offered an explanation, recorded in thousands of clay tablets that have survived millennia buried beneath the desert sands. They claimed they were taught by the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens in flying vehicles, who possessed powers that seemed magical to primitive humans. These were not metaphorical gods of thunder and rain. The Sumerian texts describe them with remarkable specificity. They had physical bodies. They ate and drank. They formed relationships with humans, producing hybrid offspring. They lived for thousands of years but were not immortal. They came from a place beyond Earth, a world the Sumerians called Nibiru. The cuneiform tablets recovered from ancient Sumerian cities provide detailed accounts of Anunnaki activities on Earth. The Enuma Elish, often called the Babylonian creation epic, describes how these beings shaped human civilization. The Epic of Gilgamesh recounts interactions between humans and Anunnaki, including the Great Flood that nearly destroyed humanity. The Sumerian king list chronicles rulers who reigned for impossibly long periods, living for thousands of years. Conventional scholars interpret these as myths and exaggerations, but what if they were historical records? What if the Sumerians were documenting actual events, actual beings, using the only language and concepts they possessed? Examine the details recorded in these tablets. The Anunnaki are described arriving on Earth roughly 450,000 years ago. They came seeking gold, which they needed for purposes the tablets link to atmospheric maintenance of their homeworld. The initial landing party consisted of 50 Anunnaki, led by a being named Enki, the god of wisdom and water. They established their first base in the region that would later become Sumer. They began mining operations in Southeast Africa, extracting gold from the earth. For thousands of years, the Anunnaki labored in these mines. But the work was difficult, even for beings of their capabilities. The tablets describe a rebellion. The worker Anunnaki refused to continue the backbreaking mining operations. This is where humanity enters the story. Faced with a labor shortage, the Anunnaki made a decision that would alter the course of Earth's history forever. According to the tablets, Enki proposed creating a primitive worker, an intelligent being capable of understanding instructions and performing complex tasks, but subservient to the Anunnaki. The tablets describe a process that sounds remarkably like genetic engineering. The Anunnaki took existing hominids, creatures already present on Earth, and modified them. They mixed their own genetic material with that of these primitive beings, creating a hybrid species, modern humans. Homo sapiens. The Atrahasis tablet provides the most detailed account of human creation. It describes how the goddess Ninti, whose name means Lady of Life, used the blood and essence of a slain Anunnaki to create the first humans in a laboratory-like setting. The tablet speaks of mixing clay with divine blood. Scholars interpret this as primitive metaphor. But could clay be a poetic description of genetic material? Could the process described be an ancient attempt to explain genetic manipulation using the only concepts available to Bronze Age scribes? The tablets state that humans were created to be workers, to serve the Anunnaki in their mining operations and agricultural endeavors. For generations, humanity existed as a slave species, laboring for cosmic masters, but something unexpected occurred. Humans began to evolve beyond their original design. We developed self-awareness, creativity, spiritual consciousness. We exceeded our design parameters. The tablets describe this as a gift from Enki, who took pity on his creation and taught humans knowledge they were not originally meant to have. Other texts imply it happened accidentally, a side effect of mixing Anunnaki genetics with terrestrial DNA. The result was a species that possessed both the spiritual essence of the gods and the physical limitations of Earth. We carried Anunnaki genetic material, which gave us capabilities far beyond any other terrestrial species. But we were bound to this planet, subject to disease, aging, and death in ways the Anunnaki were not. The tablets describe humanity as being caught between two worlds, not fully animal, not fully divine. A hybrid creation that would eventually grow to inherit the Earth after the Anunnaki departed. But before that departure, before the gods withdrew from direct interaction with humanity, they established civilization. The tablets credit the Anunnaki with teaching humans agriculture, showing them how to cultivate crops and domesticate animals. They taught mathematics and astronomy, allowing humans to track the movements of celestial bodies with remarkable precision. They established laws and systems of governance. They provided knowledge of medicine and healing. The Sumerians recorded all of this, crediting specific Anunnaki with specific gifts to humanity. Enki, the god of wisdom, was said to have taught humanity the arts of civilization. Writing, mathematics, and science all fell under his domain. His symbol was two serpents intertwined, an image that bears striking resemblance to the double helix structure of DNA, a structure humans would not officially discover until 1953. Enlil, Enki's half-brother and rival, ruled over the winds and storms. He represented order and authority, often portrayed as harsh but just. Nin-Hursag, the mother goddess, was associated with fertility and childbirth. She was said to have helped create humans and took particular interest in their well-being. These were not distant, unknowable deities. The Sumerian texts present them as physical beings with personalities, desires, conflicts, and relationships. They fell in love with humans. They competed for power among themselves. They made mistakes. They grew old, though much slower than humans. They could be wounded and killed, though they possessed technology and medicine far beyond anything humans could achieve. They lived in ziggurat temples, massive stepped pyramids that dominated Sumerian cities, and from these temples, they ruled over humanity as kings and queens. The ziggurat structure itself holds significance in our investigation. These stepped pyramids were not mere religious symbols. According to the tablets, they served as landing platforms and dwellings for the Anunnaki. The word ziggurat comes from the Akkadian word zik-kuratu, meaning to build on a raised area. The largest ziggurats featured multiple levels, each one smaller than the one below, creating a mountain-like structure that rose toward the heavens. At the summit stood a temple, a sacred space reserved for the gods. No ordinary human was permitted at the top. Only priests specifically selected and trained by the Anunnaki themselves could enter those highest chambers. Consider the Ziggurat of Ur, one of the best preserved examples. Built around 2100 BCE, it rose over 60 feet into the desert sky. The foundation alone measured 200 feet by 150 feet. The walls were not vertical but sloped inward at a specific angle, providing structural stability. 3 massive stairways, each containing 100 steps, led to the upper levels. The entire structure was oriented to the cardinal directions with remarkable precision. Why such exactitude? The tablets suggest these structures needed to align with celestial bodies, serving as beacons or navigational markers for craft descending from the sky. The architectural principles developed in Sumerian ziggurats would later influence pyramid construction in Egypt, but the Egyptian pyramids would serve a different purpose. Where ziggurats were landing platforms and temples for living gods, the pyramids would become vaults, secure storage facilities designed to contain objects and knowledge too powerful to leave accessible. The Anunnaki's time of open rule over humanity was ending. According to the tablets, they made a decision. They would withdraw from direct governance. They would allow humanity to develop on its own, but they would not leave us completely unprepared for what was to come. The tablets describe a great council. The leading Anunnaki gathered to decide the future of both their civilization and ours. Some wanted to destroy humanity, viewing us as a failed experiment that had grown too numerous and too independent. Others argued for preservation, claiming humans had developed beyond their original purpose and deserved a chance to evolve freely. The debate raged. The tablets speak of conflicts between Enki, who championed humanity, and Enlil, who viewed us as dangerous. The decision that emerged from this council would shape the next phase of human history. Humanity would be allowed to survive, but certain knowledge would be hidden. The most powerful Anunnaki technologies, the tools they had used to modify genetics and manipulate matter itself, these would be sealed away. Humanity was not ready for such power. The tablets suggest the Anunnaki feared what we might do with knowledge that could reshape reality. They had seen our capacity for violence, our tribal conflicts, our tendency to use any tool as a weapon. They decided that certain secrets needed to remain locked away until humanity matured, until we evolved to a point where we could be trusted with the power of gods. But where would they hide these secrets? How could they ensure knowledge would remain secure for thousands of years, protected from both natural decay and human curiosity? The Sumerians already had ziggurats, but these were too accessible. Any determined group could climb the stairs and enter the temples. The Anunnaki needed something different, something massive and permanent, something that would stand for millennia without maintenance. Something built with such precision that breaking into sealed chambers would be nearly impossible without advanced technology. They needed pyramids. The decision to move operations westward came from multiple factors. The Mesopotamian region, while fertile and populous, was too unstable politically. Human civilizations there were growing powerful, developing their own kingdoms and armies. Egypt offered advantages. The Nile River provided abundant resources. The desert surrounding the river valley created natural isolation. Most importantly, the bedrock beneath the Giza Plateau was solid limestone, perfect for supporting massive structures. The tablets indicate that a group of Anunnaki traveled to Egypt, bringing with them knowledge, technology, and a specific mission. They would build monuments unlike anything humanity had seen. And within those monuments they would hide what must not be found. But building such structures required workers, skilled laborers who could cut stone with precision, who could move blocks weighing dozens of tons, who could align structures to celestial bodies with mathematical accuracy. The Anunnaki could not do this work themselves. Their numbers were too few. They needed human hands, but humans with knowledge, humans who had been taught the sciences of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. The tablets suggest they selected specific groups, trained them, taught them just enough to complete the construction without understanding the true purpose of what they were building. These trained humans would become the priesthood of Egypt, the knowledge keepers who would maintain the pyramids for generations, performing rituals whose original meanings had been lost. They knew the pyramids were sacred. They knew certain chambers must never be opened. They knew the pharaohs who claimed ownership of these structures were following traditions established by gods. But the full truth, the reality of what lay sealed in hidden chambers, this was kept from all but a select few. And as centuries became millennia, even that knowledge faded into legend. The Sumerian tablets go quiet on Egypt after describing the initial mission. Later, Babylonian and Akkadian texts, written by civilizations that inherited Sumerian knowledge, contain fragments. References to the House of Eternity built in the Western land, mentions of sacred objects sealed beneath stone, warnings that certain seals must never be broken, that certain doorways must remain closed until the return of the gods. But details are scarce. Either the information was deliberately obscured, or the tablets containing fuller accounts remain undiscovered, still buried beneath millennia of sand and ruins. What we can piece together from the fragments is this. The Anunnaki came to Earth seeking resources. They created humanity as workers. We evolved beyond our original purpose, developing consciousness and culture. The Anunnaki taught us the foundations of civilization. They ruled over us openly for thousands of years. Then they made a decision to withdraw. Before leaving, they built structures designed to last for eternity. And inside those structures, they placed something they considered too dangerous for primitive humanity to access. The pyramids were not tombs, they were time capsules, sealed vaults waiting for the day when humanity would be ready to learn what the gods left behind. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands 481 feet tall, its base covering 13 acres. It contains approximately 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 15 tons. Some granite blocks in the internal chambers weigh up to 80 tons. The entire structure is estimated to weigh 6 million tons. According to conventional Egyptology, this monument was built in approximately 20 years during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, around 2560 BCE. The mathematics of this timeline present immediate problems. 20 years contains roughly 7,300 days. To complete the pyramid in this time frame, workers would need to quarry, transport, cut, and position one block every 4.5 minutes, working 10 hours per day, every day, for 2 decades. This assumes no breaks for weather, religious festivals, or crop seasons when workers would be needed in fields. It assumes perfect efficiency with no mistakes, no accidents, no blocks requiring repositioning. The sheer logistical coordination required exceeds what most modern construction projects achieve with computers and advanced machinery. But the timeline is merely the first impossibility. The precision of the construction defies explanation. The base of the Great Pyramid is level to within less than 1 inch across its entire 756-foot length. The sides are oriented to the cardinal directions with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a single degree. Modern surveyors using laser equipment struggle to match this precision. How did Bronze Age workers, supposedly using copper tools and rope, achieve such exactitude? The blocks themselves present another mystery. The casing stones that originally covered the pyramid were fitted together, with joints less than 1/50th of an inch wide. You cannot slip a piece of paper between the blocks. Some joints were sealed with mortar, but the amount of mortar is so thin that its purpose seems more like a bonding agent than gap filler. The blocks were cut and shaped to interlock with mathematical precision. Conventional archaeology claims this was accomplished with copper saws and bronze chisels. Experiments attempting to replicate this process using the tools available to ancient Egyptians have failed to achieve similar results in reasonable timeframes. Limestone can be cut with copper tools, though inefficiently, but the granite used in the King's Chamber and Grand Gallery presents a different challenge entirely. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth, composed of quartz and feldspar crystals that copper cannot cut. Modern stonemasons use diamond-tipped or carbide tools to work granite. Ancient Egyptians supposedly accomplished the same results with copper and stone pounders. Some researchers have suggested they used sand as an abrasive in conjunction with copper saws, wearing down the granite through friction. But experimental archaeology has shown this method to be prohibitively time-consuming. A single cut through a granite block using this technique could take months. Yet the granite beams above the King's Chamber show evidence of precise cuts. These beams, each weighing approximately 70 tons, feature flat surfaces and right angles. Some show signs of what appear to be saw marks, parallel grooves running across the stone. The spacing of these grooves suggests a saw blade at least 9 feet long. What Bronze Age technology could have powered such a tool? How was the blade kept straight during cutting? How was the immense friction managed without the metal heating and warping? The transportation of blocks adds another layer of impossibility. The limestone was quarried from sites near the pyramid, but the granite came from Aswan, over 500 miles south along the Nile. 80-ton granite blocks had to be loaded onto barges, floated down the river, then transported overland to the Giza Plateau. From there, they had to be moved into position inside the pyramid, including lifting them 200 feet into the air to the level of the King's Chamber. Conventional archaeology proposes ramps. Massive earthen or wooden ramps built alongside the pyramid, allowing workers to drag blocks upward using rope and muscle power. The ramp theory faces severe challenges. To maintain a reasonable incline, a ramp reaching the top of the Great Pyramid would need to stretch nearly a mile long. The amount of material required to build such a ramp would exceed the material in the pyramid itself. Where is the evidence of these ramps? Where did all that earthen material go after the pyramid was completed? Some researchers propose internal ramps, spiral corridors within the pyramid that allowed blocks to be dragged upward. But no evidence of such ramps has been found, and the internal volume of the pyramid does not seem to allow for ramp structures large enough to accommodate the massive granite blocks. Jean-Pierre Houdin, a French architect, proposed a sophisticated internal ramp theory in 2007, using 3D modeling to show how such a system might work. His model is elegant and addresses many concerns, but it remains theoretical. Ground-penetrating radar and microgravity surveys have detected voids and density variations within the pyramid, but these have not definitively confirmed the existence of internal ramps. The question remains open. How were 80-ton granite blocks moved into position 200 feet above ground level using only Bronze Age technology? The alignment of the pyramid provides another puzzle. The structure is oriented to true north with remarkable accuracy. True north, not magnetic north. The difference is significant. Magnetic north varies depending on location and shifts over time. True north is constant, determined by Earth's axis of rotation. Finding true north requires astronomical observation and mathematical calculation. The ancient Egyptians could have used the stars for this purpose. The northern stars rotate around Polaris, the North Star. By observing this rotation and calculating the center point, true north can be determined. But this method requires clear skies, precise instruments, and sophisticated mathematics. More intriguing is the relationship between the pyramid's dimensions and mathematical constants. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height is almost exactly 2 pi. This ratio emerges naturally if you construct a pyramid using a ratio of height to base that matches the ratio of a circle's radius to its circumference. Did the ancient Egyptians understand pi? Conventional Egyptology suggests they had practical knowledge of pi for calculating areas and volumes, but did not recognize it as a mathematical constant. Yet, the pyramid's dimensions suggest otherwise. The pyramid's location on Earth presents geographic coincidences that strain credibility. The Great Pyramid sits at latitude 29.9792458 degrees north. The speed of light in a vacuum is 299,792,458 meters per second. This numerical match is dismissed as coincidence by mainstream scholars. After all, the meter as a unit of measurement was not defined until the 18th century, and the speed of light was not calculated precisely until the 19th century. How could ancient builders have known these values, unless they possessed knowledge far beyond what conventional history allows? The Giza complex as a whole displays planning that suggests knowledge of the entire site before construction began. The 3 main pyramids are not randomly placed. They align with each other in ways that suggest deliberate geometric relationships. Robert Bauval's Orion correlation theory, proposed in 1983, noted that the 3 pyramids match the pattern of the 3 stars in Orion's belt. The size and position of each pyramid corresponds to the brightness and position of each star. The offset of the smallest pyramid matches the offset of the dimmest star. The Milky Way's position in the sky correlates with the Nile's position on the ground. Mainstream Egyptology has criticized Bauval's theory, pointing out that the correlation is not perfect, and that the orientation of the pyramids to the stars only matches if you project the star positions backward to approximately 10,500 BCE, thousands of years before the pyramids were supposedly built. Bauval's response is that the pyramids might have been designed to commemorate or point to that earlier era, that they serve as markers or time capsules encoding knowledge from before the flood, from an earlier age when the Anunnaki walked openly on Earth. The Sphinx adds weight to this theory. Erosion patterns on the Sphinx and its enclosure suggest water weathering, not wind erosion. Geologist Robert Schoch has argued that the depth and pattern of erosion could only result from sustained rainfall over long periods. But the Giza Plateau has been arid for over 5,000 years. When was the last time the region experienced rainfall heavy enough to create such erosion? Climate data suggests the Sahara was wet and green until approximately 7,000 to 5,000 BCE. If the Sphinx was carved during that period, it would predate the pyramids by thousands of years. It would mean the Giza complex has roots far older than conventional chronology allows. Mainstream Egyptologists dismiss Schoch's water erosion theory, arguing that the patterns can be explained by wind erosion, chemical weathering, or other factors. The debate continues. But if we consider the Sumerian perspective, an older date for Giza makes sense. The Anunnaki were active on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years according to the tablets. Their architectural projects would not be limited to a single dynasty or pharaoh. The structures at Giza might represent layers of construction spanning millennia, with different phases serving different purposes. The internal structure of the Great Pyramid contains features that serve no obvious purpose if the structure is merely a tomb. The Grand Gallery is a soaring, corbelled hall rising 28 feet high and 153 feet long. Its walls consist of massive limestone blocks stacked in overlapping layers, each layer offset inward, creating a ceiling that narrows toward the top. The precision of this construction is extraordinary. Each block had to be positioned perfectly to distribute weight and prevent collapse. The effort involved seems excessive for a simple passageway. Why build something so elaborate if it is just a hallway leading to a burial chamber? The king's chamber itself contains no hieroglyphs, no decorations, no evidence that a body was ever placed there. The granite sarcophagus in the chamber is empty and shows no signs of ever having contained a mummy. The sarcophagus is cut from a single block of red granite, hollowed out with precision. Its internal dimensions are exactly proportioned, but it contains no lid and shows no evidence that one ever existed. If this was meant to hold a pharaoh's body, where is the lid? Why are there no inscriptions? Why is the chamber devoid of the funerary decorations found in every confirmed Egyptian tomb? Above the king's chamber are 5 additional chambers, called relieving chambers because they supposedly distribute the weight of the pyramid away from the burial chamber below. The top of these relieving chambers features massive granite beams arranged in a peaked roof. The construction is impressive, but the need for 5 separate relieving chambers seems like overkill. Conventional explanations suggest the builders were being cautious, using redundancy to ensure the king's chamber would not collapse under the weight above it. But other pyramids lack such elaborate stress relief systems. Why was such extraordinary effort applied to this particular chamber? Some researchers propose the relieving chambers served an acoustic purpose. The dimensions and materials might have been designed to create resonance at specific frequencies. Experiments have shown that certain sounds, when produced in the king's chamber, create standing waves and vibrations that can be felt throughout the room. The granite blocks ring like bells when struck. Could the chamber have been designed as a resonance device? A machine that used sound frequencies for purposes we do not yet understand? The shafts extending from the king's and queen's chambers present another mystery. These narrow passages, approximately 8 inches square, run at angles through the pyramid's mass, emerging on the outer surface. For years, they were called air shafts, thought to provide ventilation for workers during construction or symbolic passages for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the stars. But in the 1960s, researchers discovered that the shafts from the queen's chamber do not actually open to the outside. They stop before reaching the surface, terminating at stone blocks set within the pyramid's mass. In 1993, a robotic exploration of these shafts revealed the first of what would be called doors, small limestone blocks fitted with copper pins, blocking further progress up the shaft. In 2002, a robot drilled through the first door in the southern shaft, revealing a small chamber and another door beyond. The exploration was broadcast live on television. Millions watched as the robot's camera pushed through the hole, expecting to see a hidden chamber filled with treasure or knowledge. Instead, they saw another wall, another barrier. Whatever these shafts lead to remains unknown. The doors have not been fully opened. The Egyptian authorities have been reluctant to allow invasive exploration that might damage the pyramid. Why seal off shafts within the pyramid? If they are air shafts, why do they not reach the outside? If they are symbolic passages, why block them with stone doors fitted with copper pins? The presence of copper suggests the pins served a functional purpose, not merely symbolic. Copper conducts electricity. Could these pins have been part of a system we do not yet understand? Were the shafts conduits for something other than air or souls? The recent discovery of additional voids within the Great Pyramid has reignited speculation. In 2017, the Scam Pyramids project used cosmic ray muon detection to peer inside the pyramid without drilling or excavation. Muons are subatomic particles created when cosmic rays strike Earth's atmosphere. They pass through solid matter, but dense materials like stone absorb more muons than empty space. By placing muon detectors around the pyramid and measuring the number of muons that pass through from different angles, researchers can create a density map of the structure's interior. The scans revealed a large void above the Grand Gallery, approximately 100 feet long and at least 15 feet high. This void does not appear on any architectural plans. It was unknown to archaeologists. Its purpose is unclear. The researchers who discovered it have been careful not to call it a chamber. They use the term void, implying empty space but not necessarily a room designed for a specific function. Still, the discovery raises obvious questions. What is this space? Why was it left empty? How do you access it? Egyptian authorities have blocked further investigation. No drilling, no excavation, no attempts to insert cameras or robots into the void. The official position is that such invasive methods could damage the pyramid, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and must be preserved. But preservation concerns do not fully explain the reluctance. Similar voids have been explored in other pyramids using minimally invasive techniques. Why the resistance here? What are the authorities afraid of finding? Or afraid of not finding? The construction techniques, the precision, the alignment, the internal features that serve no clear purpose, the sealed shafts with copper-pinned doors, the hidden voids, all of these suggest the Great Pyramid is not what we have been told. It is not a tomb. The effort invested in its construction far exceeds what would be necessary for a burial monument. The knowledge required to design and build it surpasses what Bronze Age humans should have possessed. If we accept the possibility that the Anunnaki existed, that they possessed advanced knowledge and technology, that they built or supervised the construction of this monument for purposes they later concealed, then the pyramid's mysteries begin to make sense. The Sumerian tablets describe the Anunnaki as master builders who used knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering far beyond human capabilities of the time. They had access to tools and methods that have been lost or deliberately hidden. If they designed the pyramids as vaults, as sealed repositories for objects or knowledge they did not want humans to access, they would have built in layers of protection. Physical barriers like the massive stone blocks, geometric complexity that would confuse anyone trying to map the interior, false passages and decoy chambers to lead explorers away from what truly matters. And most importantly, they would have designed the structure so that certain spaces could not be accessed without technology humans did not yet possess. Consider what it would take to reach the void above the Grand Gallery. You cannot simply drill through from the outside. The pyramid's mass is too great. You would need to tunnel through hundreds of feet of solid limestone, removing and disposing of tons of material without destabilizing the structure. Approaching from inside would require cutting through the Grand Gallery's ceiling, removing massive corbelled stones that are load-bearing elements of the pyramid's internal structure. Any attempt to do so risks collapse. The void might be utterly inaccessible using conventional methods, unless you have technology that can cut through stone like butter, unless you have devices that can manipulate gravity or molecular bonds, allowing you to phase through solid matter, unless you have knowledge that makes the pyramid's barriers as easy to bypass as a locked door is to someone who has the key. The Anunnaki would have possessed such capabilities if the tablets are accurate. They would have been able to seal chambers in ways that only beings with equivalent technology could open. For ancient humans with copper tools, the sealed spaces might as well be on the moon. Unreachable, unknowable. The ancient Egyptians were obsessed with the stars. Their religion centered on the journey of the soul after death, ascending to join the imperishable stars in the northern sky. Their calendar was based on the heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. Their temples aligned with solstices and equinoxes, but the precision of these alignments, and the astronomical knowledge required to achieve them, suggests an understanding of celestial mechanics that took modern civilization thousands of years to rediscover. The Great Pyramid's alignment to true north, accurate to within 3/60ths of a degree, requires observation of circumpolar stars. In the time of the pyramid's supposed construction, around 2560 BCE, the star Thuban, in the constellation Draco, would have been the pole star, positioned almost exactly at the north celestial pole. By tracking Thuban's position throughout the night, ancient astronomers could determine true north with precision, but this requires sophisticated instruments. A merket, the ancient Egyptian equivalent of an astrolabe, could provide sufficient accuracy if used correctly, but the margin for error is tiny. A miscalculation of even half a degree would result in an alignment error of over 3 feet across the pyramid's base. The fact that this precision was achieved and maintained across a structure covering 13 acres suggests either extraordinary care and skill or knowledge of methods we have not considered. Some researchers propose that the builders used water-filled trenches as levels, creating a perfectly horizontal reference plane from which all measurements were taken. Others suggest they used the stars themselves as reference points, not just for north-south alignment, but for establishing the pyramid's dimensions and proportions. If you know the exact positions of multiple stars at a given time, you can use their angles above the horizon to calculate latitude, establish cardinal directions, and even determine the length of the solar year with remarkable accuracy. The shafts extending from the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid point to specific stars. The southern shaft, at the time of the pyramid's construction, aligned with Alnitak, the brightest star in Orion's belt. The northern shaft aligned with Thuban. These were not random alignments. Orion held special significance in Egyptian religion. The constellation was associated with Osiris, god of death and resurrection. The pyramid texts, among the oldest religious writings in the world, describe the deceased pharaoh ascending to join Osiris in the stars. O king, you are this great star, the companion of Orion, who traverses the sky with Orion, who navigates the netherworld with Osiris. But why Orion specifically? What made this constellation so important that pyramid shafts were designed to point to it? Robert Bauval's research suggests the 3 pyramids of Giza were positioned to mirror Orion's belt on the ground. The correlation is striking. The 3 stars of the belt, Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka, form a line that is not quite straight. Mintaka, the westernmost star, is offset slightly to the north. The 3 pyramids match this pattern. The pyramid of Menkaure, the smallest, is offset to the east, matching Mintaka's offset. The sizes of the pyramids correspond roughly to the brightness of the stars. Alnitak is the brightest, and the Great Pyramid is the largest. If you overlay a star map of Orion's belt onto a map of Giza, the match is remarkable, but only if you use the star positions from approximately 10,500 BCE. In that era, Orion reached its lowest point in the precessional cycle. Precession is the slow wobble of Earth's axis, which causes the positions of stars to shift gradually over thousands of years. The cycle takes about 25,920 years to complete. In 10,500 BCE, Orion would have been positioned at its southern extreme, reaching its minimum altitude above the horizon at culmination. The Nile's position on the ground mirrors the Milky Way's position in the sky during this era. Conventional Egyptology rejects this correlation, pointing out that the pyramids were built in 2560 BCE, not 10,500 BCE. Carbon dating of organic materials found in the mortar between pyramid blocks supports the conventional date. But carbon dating tells us when the organic material died, not when the pyramid was built. If the builders used old wood or recycled materials, the dates could be misleading. Moreover, carbon dating has a margin of error, and contamination of samples can skew results. The technique is useful, but not absolute. Bauval's theory does not require the pyramids to have been physically built in 10,500 BCE. He proposes they were built in the conventional time frame, but designed to commemorate or point to that earlier era. The Anunnaki, according to Sumerian tablets, were active on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. If they wanted to create a monument that encoded a specific date, they could design it to reflect the sky as it appeared at that time. The pyramids might be markers, astronomical clocks frozen in stone, pointing to a moment in the deep past when something significant occurred. What happened in 10,500 BCE? According to geological and climate data, this period falls near the end of the last ice age. The Younger Dryas, a sudden return to glacial conditions, was ending. Global temperatures were rising, ice sheets were melting, sea levels were increasing rapidly, flooding coastal areas around the world. Many researchers believe this period saw catastrophic climate change, potentially triggered by cosmic impacts or supervolcanic eruptions. Graham Hancock and other alternative historians propose that an advanced civilization existed before this catastrophe, a civilization wiped out by floods and climate upheaval, leaving behind only scattered ruins and myths. The Sumerian tablets describe a great flood that nearly destroyed humanity. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the Atrahasis, and other texts recount how the gods decided to wipe out humans and how one god defied the council to save a select group. Flood myths exist in nearly every ancient culture. The biblical flood of Noah, the Greek story of Deucalion. Hindu texts describe Manu surviving a deluge. Indigenous American myths speak of world-ending floods. Are these independent myths arising from different cultures' experiences with local flooding? Or are they racial memories of a global catastrophe that occurred at the end of the Ice Age? If such a catastrophe occurred around 10,500 BCE, and if the Anunnaki were present on Earth at the time, they would have known it was coming. The tablets describe them as possessing advanced knowledge of astronomy and planetary cycles. They could predict celestial events. They would have seen the signs, the approach of a cosmic object, the instability of ice sheets. Whatever trigger caused the Younger Dryas, they would have understood it in advance, and they would have taken steps to preserve knowledge and materials that might be lost. The pyramids might have been planned in that ancient era, even if they were not physically constructed until thousands of years later. The Anunnaki could have left instructions, blueprints encoded in symbols or passed down through oral tradition, preserved by initiated priesthoods. When they finally withdrew from direct interaction with humanity, they ensured those instructions were executed. The pyramids were built according to the ancient plan, positioned to reflect the sky of 10,500 BCE, containing sealed chambers that held artifacts and knowledge from that earlier age. This would explain the presence of the Sphinx. If the Sphinx displays water erosion requiring thousands of years of rainfall, and if the last time the Giza Plateau was wet was before 5000 BCE, then the Sphinx must predate the pyramids. It could be a remnant of that earlier civilization, carved when the climate was different. The pyramids could have been built later, positioned in relation to the Sphinx according to a master plan that spanned millennia. The entire Giza complex becomes a message across time, layers of construction from different eras, all serving the same ultimate purpose. But the stellar alignments encode more than just a date. They encode knowledge. The precision required to align structures to stars necessitates understanding of geometry, trigonometry, and the Earth's dimensions. You cannot accurately point a shaft at a star without knowing your exact latitude. To know your latitude, you must understand that the Earth is a sphere and that different locations on its surface see celestial objects at different angles. Ancient Egyptians supposedly believed the Earth was flat, with the sky held up by mountains or pillars at the cardinal directions. Yet the pyramid's construction suggests knowledge of Earth's spherical nature and its actual size. The Great Pyramid's dimensions encode the Earth's proportions. If you multiply the pyramid's height by 43,200, you get the polar radius of Earth. If you multiply the perimeter of the pyramid's base by 43,200, you get the circumference of Earth at the equator. The number 43,200 appears to be deliberate. It is 12 cubed times 10, a number that has significance in many ancient systems of measurement and timekeeping. The Sumerian sexagesimal system, based on the number 60, also produces numbers like 3,000, 600, and 400, and 32,000, which appear in various mythological texts describing cosmic cycles. This encoding of Earth's dimensions in the pyramid suggests the builders knew the size and shape of our planet. They had measured it. But how? Eratosthenes, a Greek mathematician in the 3rd century BCE, is credited with the first accurate measurement of Earth's circumference. He used the difference in the angle of the sun at noon between two cities to calculate the planet's size. His method was brilliant but required knowledge of geometry and the ability to measure angles precisely. Did the ancient Egyptians possess this knowledge 2,000 years before Eratosthenes, or did they inherit it from an earlier source? From the Anunnaki? The pyramid also encodes the speed of light. The latitude of the Great Pyramid is 29.979245 degrees north. The speed of light in meters per second is 299,792,458. This correspondence has been dismissed as coincidence because the meter was not defined until the 18th century. The meter was originally defined as 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the equator to the North Pole along a meridian. So the meter is based on Earth's dimensions, and the pyramid encodes Earth's dimensions. Could the choice of the pyramid's location have been deliberate, selecting a latitude that would encode a fundamental constant of the universe when expressed in units derived from the planet's own size? This seems like an absurd level of planning. It requires knowledge not just of Earth's size but of the speed of light, a constant that was not measured accurately until the 19th century. How could the Anunnaki have known this value? Unless their science was advanced enough to understand physics at a level we are only now beginning to match. The speed of light is fundamental to understanding relativity, quantum mechanics, and the structure of space-time. A civilization capable of interstellar travel would necessarily understand these principles. They would know the speed of light as precisely as we know it now. Encoding this number in the pyramid's location would serve as a marker, a sign to any future civilization that achieves sufficient scientific understanding. When humanity developed the ability to measure the speed of light and define units of measurement based on planetary dimensions, we would discover the correlation. We would realize it could not be coincidence. We would understand that the pyramid was placed there deliberately by beings who knew what we would eventually discover. It is a message saying, we were here, we knew these things, and when you learn them too, you will be ready for what we left behind. The shafts pointing to Orion and Thuban serve a similar function. Orion's belt is visible from anywhere on Earth. It is one of the most recognizable asterisms in the night sky. The pyramids, by mirroring Orion on the ground, create a link between Earth and the heavens. As above, so below, the Hermetic principle attributed to ancient Egyptian wisdom. The pyramids are not just monuments on the ground. They are reflections of cosmic patterns, physical embodiments of celestial geometry. But Orion holds another significance. In 10,500 BCE, at the moment when Orion reached its lowest point in the precessional cycle, the Sphinx would have been looking directly at Leo, the constellation of the lion, rising on the eastern horizon at the spring equinox. The Sphinx has the body of a lion. Could its orientation and design encode this astronomical moment? Could the entire Giza complex be a massive clock, marking not hours or days but cosmic cycles spanning tens of thousands of years? Precession is caused by the wobble in Earth's axis. As the axis slowly shifts, the position of the celestial poles changes. Different stars become the pole star over the millennia. The constellations appear to drift through the sky, completing a full cycle every 25,920 years. Ancient cultures tracked this cycle. The concept of the Great Year appears in Greek, Hindu, and Persian texts. The Egyptians divided the Great Year into 12 ages, each lasting 2,160 years, corresponding to the time it takes for the spring equinox to move through one zodiacal constellation. We are currently transitioning from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. In 10,500 BCE, the age would have been Leo, the lion. The Sphinx, a lion, marks that age. The pyramids, aligned to Orion's position in that era, mark the same moment. The entire complex points to a specific point in time, a moment when something happened, a moment the Anunnaki wanted humanity to remember. What occurred then? The flood myths provide one answer, a catastrophe that reshaped the world. But perhaps something else happened too. Perhaps that was when the Anunnaki first arrived on Earth, or when they made the decision to create humanity, or when they sealed away their most important secrets, knowing that cataclysm was coming. The Giza complex becomes a memorial, a marker, and a vault all at once. It commemorates the past, encodes knowledge in its structure, and contains physical artifacts in its sealed chambers. The astronomical alignments also provide timing. If the pyramids mark the sky of 10,500 BCE, and if precession brings the sky back to the same configuration every 25,920 years, then the pyramids will align with the same stars again. One full precessional cycle from 10,500 BCE brings us to approximately 15,420 CE, far in the future. But half a cycle, when the sky is inverted, when Orion reaches its highest point instead of its lowest, occurs around 12,000 years from 10,500 BCE, which places it near our current era. Are we approaching a moment that the Anunnaki encoded? Are the seals designed to open now, in our time, when humanity has reached the level of technology and understanding necessary? The discovery of the hidden void in 2017 using muon detection might be the first step. We can now see what was invisible. The next step is accessing it. And perhaps, when we do, we will find not just artifacts but instructions, a guide to what comes next. The Sumerian tablets describe the creation of humanity in terms that sound remarkably like genetic engineering. Modern humans emerged approximately 300,000 years ago, according to genetic and fossil evidence. We appeared suddenly, with capabilities far exceeding our hominid ancestors. Our brain size tripled in a relatively short evolutionary timeframe. We developed complex language, abstract thought, and the ability to plan for the future. Conventional evolution struggles to explain this rapid transformation. Natural selection works slowly, refining traits over millions of years through survival advantages. But humans evolved cognitive abilities in a fraction of that time. The tablets offer an explanation. The Anunnaki modified existing hominids, inserting their own genetic material to create a new species. Modern science has shown that human DNA contains sequences that appear to have been inserted rather than evolved naturally. Our genome includes fragments from viruses, bacteria, and other organisms, incorporated through horizontal gene transfer. This process occurs naturally, but the presence of certain genetic sequences suggests more deliberate manipulation. Human chromosome 2 is particularly interesting. All great apes have 24 pairs of chromosomes. Humans have 23 pairs. The difference comes from a fusion event where two smaller chromosomes merge to form a single larger one. This fusion is evident in the structure of chromosome 2, which contains telomeres, the protective caps usually found at the ends of chromosomes, in its middle. It also has two centromeres, the structures that help chromosomes divide during cell division, where most chromosomes have only one. This fusion should not have occurred naturally. Chromosome fusions are typically fatal or lead to severe genetic disorders. For a fusion to persist in a population, it must happen in reproductive cells, and the resulting organism must not only survive but reproduce successfully enough for the mutation to spread. The odds against this are astronomical. Yet human chromosome 2 exists in every member of our species. Some geneticists suggest this fusion was the key event that separated humans from other primates, giving us the unique cognitive capabilities that define our species. Could this have been engineered? The Sumerian tablets describe the Anunnaki mixing their essence with that of primitive humans. If they had the technology to manipulate chromosomes, forcing a fusion event while ensuring the resulting organism remained viable, they could have created a new species with a single genetic modification. This modification would be visible in our DNA thousands of years later, a signature of artificial intervention. Humans also possess genetic sequences not found in our evolutionary ancestors. The FOXP2 gene, associated with language and speech, appears to have undergone rapid changes in the human lineage. The human version differs from the chimpanzee version by only 2 amino acids, but those 2 changes have dramatic effects on our ability to produce complex vocalizations and process language. The changes appear recent in evolutionary terms, occurring within the last 200,000 years. Natural selection could explain this, but the speed and specificity of the changes are unusual. The HAR1 gene, Human Accelerated Region 1, is another example. This gene is involved in brain development, particularly the formation of the cerebral cortex, the region responsible for higher thought. The human version of HAR1 differs significantly from versions found in other primates, with changes concentrated in a small region that appears to have evolved rapidly. In chickens and chimpanzees, the HAR1 region is almost identical, despite these species diverging millions of years ago. But in humans, it changed dramatically in a short period. Why? Conventional genetics attributes these changes to evolutionary pressure. Our ancestors lived in environments where intelligence provided survival advantages. Better planning, better communication, better tool use all increased reproductive success. Over time, mutations that enhanced cognitive function were selected for, but the specific nature of the changes and the speed at which they occurred suggests targeted modification rather than random mutation and selection. If the Anunnaki created humans by modifying hominid DNA, they would have focused on genes that control intelligence, language, and behavior. They wanted workers who could understand complex instructions but remain obedient. The tablets describe humans as being created to bear the yoke of the gods. To perform labor the Anunnaki no longer wanted to do themselves. For this purpose, increasing cognitive function while maintaining docility would be ideal. A species smart enough to farm, build, and mine, but not smart enough to rebel or question their creators. But something went wrong. Humans developed consciousness. We became self-aware. We began to question our role and our origins. We developed culture, art, religion, and philosophy. We exceeded our design parameters. The tablets describe this as a gift from Enki, who took pity on his creation and taught humans knowledge they were not originally meant to have. Other texts imply it happened accidentally, a side effect of mixing Anunnaki genetics with terrestrial DNA. The result was a species that possessed both the spiritual essence of the gods and the physical limitations of Earth. We carried Anunnaki genetic material, which gave us capabilities far beyond any other terrestrial species. But we were bound to this planet, subject to disease, aging, and death in ways the Anunnaki were not. The tablets describe humanity as being caught between two worlds, not fully animal, not fully divine, a hybrid creation that would eventually grow to inherit the Earth after the Anunnaki departed. But before that departure, before the gods withdrew from direct interaction with humanity, certain knowledge would be hidden. The tablets suggest the Anunnaki feared what we might do with technologies that could reshape reality. They had seen our capacity for violence, our tribal conflicts, our tendency to use any tool as a weapon. They decided that certain secrets needed to remain locked away until humanity matured. Until we evolved to a point where we could be trusted with the power of gods, the pyramids might contain the keys. Not just knowledge of how we were created, but the actual tools or instructions for activating dormant genetic potential. The sealed chambers could hold devices that emit specific frequencies, genetic samples that can be analyzed, or tablets that describe the full extent of what the Anunnaki did to us. Opening these chambers might not just reveal history, it might trigger transformation. This possibility terrifies some researchers. If the Anunnaki locked away these secrets, they had reasons. Perhaps they knew that premature activation would be dangerous. That humanity needed to reach a certain level of spiritual or ethical development before gaining access to these capabilities. Unlocking genetic potential without wisdom to guide its use could lead to catastrophe. We could create biological weapons, engineer superhumans who dominate normal populations, or trigger changes in our own biology that we cannot control. But others argue that we need this knowledge. Humanity faces challenges that might require enhanced capabilities. Climate change, resource depletion, potential extinction events. If our DNA contains latent abilities that could help us survive, should we not activate them? If the Anunnaki designed us with these potentials for a reason, perhaps that reason is now. The key question is what exactly is locked in our DNA? The tablets describe humans as being created with limited lifespans. The Anunnaki lived for thousands of years. Early biblical figures like Methuselah supposedly lived for centuries. Could this represent genetic memory of a time when human lifespans were much longer? Did the Anunnaki initially create humans with extended lifespans, then later modify us to shorten our lives, ensuring we would not live long enough to accumulate too much knowledge or power? Telomere length determines cellular aging. Telomeres are protective caps on the ends of chromosomes that shorten each time a cell divides. When they become too short, cells can no longer divide, leading to aging and death. Some organisms, like lobsters and certain jellyfish, have enzymes that prevent telomere shortening, giving them negligible senescence. They do not age in the traditional sense. Humans have these enzymes, but they are not active in most cells. If they were activated, we might extend our lifespans dramatically. Is the genetic switch for telomerase activation one of the locks? Could the pyramids contain knowledge of how to turn it on safely? Extended lifespans would transform human civilization. We could accumulate knowledge over centuries, pursue projects requiring decades of focused effort, and develop wisdom that comes only with age. But we would also face overpopulation, resource strain, and the social challenges of immortal elites ruling over mortal masses. The tablets describe other capabilities: enhanced sensory perception, the ability to communicate telepathically, greater resistance to disease and injury, faster healing, increased physical strength and endurance. These sound like science fiction, but they are all present in various Earth species. Some animals see in ultraviolet or infrared. Others navigate using magnetic fields. Salamanders can regenerate lost limbs. Tardigrades can survive extreme radiation and vacuum. The capabilities exist in nature. If the Anunnaki were bioengineers, they could have incorporated these traits into human DNA, locked behind genetic switches. Activating these traits would not make us superhuman in the comic book sense. We would still be biological organisms with physical limitations. but we would gain abilities currently beyond us, bringing us closer to what the Anunnaki themselves possessed. This might have been the plan all along. Create a species in their image, literally, carrying their genetics. Give that species time to develop culture and civilization on its own. Then, when it reaches sufficient maturity, provide the tools to unlock the full potential. Humanity would evolve, not through natural selection over millions of years, but through deliberate activation of designed traits. The ethical implications are staggering. Who decides when humanity is ready? Who controls access to the activation knowledge? If some people gain these abilities and others do not, it creates a genetic divide that could fracture civilization. If everyone gains them, the social and economic systems we have built might collapse under the strain. The Anunnaki apparently decided these were problems for future humans to solve. They locked the knowledge away and left us to develop on our own, trusting that when we were ready, we would handle the consequences. But there is another possibility. What if the locks are not just in our DNA but in the environment? What if accessing the sealed chambers in the pyramids requires genetic compatibility? The Anunnaki might have designed the seals to respond only to specific genetic markers, ensuring that only their descendants could open them. Bloodlines that carried more Anunnaki DNA than others would be the keepers of the keys. These bloodlines would be the royal families, the priest classes, the initiated elite who maintained secret knowledge across generations. This concept appears in many esoteric traditions. The idea that certain families possess special blood, divine right to rule, or access to hidden knowledge. European royal families claimed descent from gods. Egyptian pharaohs were considered divine. Mystery schools like the Freemasons and Rosicrucians maintained that inner wisdom was passed only to the worthy. Could these traditions preserve fragments of truth? That some humans carry more Anunnaki genetics, and that this genetic legacy grants access to secrets others cannot reach? Modern genetic testing could potentially identify markers. If we knew what Anunnaki DNA looked like, we could screen populations for it. But without a reference sample, we cannot distinguish Anunnaki genetics from normal human variation, unless we find such a sample in a sealed chamber, inside a pyramid, along with the tools and knowledge the Anunnaki left behind. What specifically did the Anunnaki seal inside the pyramids? The tablets provide hints, scattered across different texts and contexts. References to the tablets of destiny, objects that contained all knowledge, mentions of weapons that could destroy mountains, descriptions of devices that could grant immortality or communicate across vast distances. But the tablets are maddeningly vague on specifics. They tell us that powerful objects exist, that they were hidden, but not exactly what they are or precisely where. The most commonly mentioned artifact is the tablets of destiny themselves. In Mesopotamian mythology, these tablets contain the decrees of the gods, the fundamental laws that governed reality. Whoever possessed the tablets of destiny had ultimate power. Several myths describe conflicts over these tablets, with various gods or demons stealing them and others attempting to recover them. In the Enuma Elish, the god Marduk possesses the tablets after defeating Tiamat, using their power to organize the cosmos. If such tablets exist literally rather than metaphorically, what form would they take? The Sumerian clay tablets provide our knowledge of their civilization, but clay is fragile. It survives burial in dry conditions but crumbles easily. The Anunnaki would not use clay for permanent records. They would choose materials that last forever. Stone tablets like those Moses supposedly received, carved with information. Crystal structures that could store vast amounts of data in molecular arrangements. Metallic alloys that resist corrosion and decay. Or something more advanced. Information encoded in stable isotopes, in quantum states, in dimensional folds we cannot yet detect. The amount of information you can store depends on the medium. A stone tablet can hold a few hundred words carved into its surface. But if information is encoded at the molecular level, a tablet the size of a book could contain billions of pages worth of data. If quantum states are used, the information density becomes nearly infinite. The Anunnaki tablets might be small objects, unremarkable in appearance, containing the complete knowledge of their civilization. Finding them would be easy if we knew what to look for. But without knowing, we could have seen them already in scan chambers and not recognized them. Weapons are another category of artifacts the tablets describe. The Anunnaki wielded power that could destroy cities. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero encounters beings who carry weapons that flash like lightning and create thunder. The Mahabharata, an ancient Indian epic, describes weapons that sound like nuclear devices, creating massive explosions, blinding light, and radiation sickness. These could be mythological exaggerations, or they could be racial memories of actual weapons witnessed by ancient peoples. If the Anunnaki possessed such weapons, they would not leave them accessible. A weapon capable of leveling a city in the wrong hands could end civilization, so they would be sealed away. The pyramids, with their massive stone barriers and hidden chambers, would be perfect storage facilities. A weapon could be placed in a chamber designed to contain any accidental discharge, surrounded by materials that absorb or deflect energy, sealed behind stones that would take modern explosives to breach. What form would such weapons take? Directed energy devices that focus electromagnetic radiation into destructive beams. Sonic weapons that create frequencies capable of shattering stone or inducing physiological harm. Molecular disruptors that break atomic bonds, causing matter to disintegrate. Antimatter warheads that release enormous energy when matter and antimatter annihilate each other. Or something we cannot even conceptualize. Technology so advanced it appears magical. The concern with weapons extends beyond their destructive potential. If we discover an Anunnaki weapon and attempt to reverse engineer it, we might develop capabilities that destabilize global power structures. Nations already possess nuclear arsenals capable of ending human civilization. Adding Anunnaki technology to that mix creates scenarios where one state or group gains overwhelming advantage, potentially triggering conflicts as others attempt to balance the scales. Medical technology represents a different category of artifacts. The Anunnaki lived for thousands of years according to the tablets. They had knowledge of genetics and biology far beyond ours. Devices that could heal injuries, cure diseases, extend lifespans, or even resurrect the dead might exist in sealed chambers. The sarcophagus in the king's chamber might not have been a coffin but a medical device. A regeneration chamber where damaged bodies could be repaired or where consciousness could be transferred to new bodies. Resurrection technology appears in Egyptian mythology. The god Osiris was killed, dismembered, and scattered across Egypt. His wife Isis collected the pieces and used magic to resurrect him long enough to conceive their child Horus. This story might be mythologized memory of actual technology. If the Anunnaki could manipulate genetics, they could potentially reconstruct bodies from genetic samples. If they understood consciousness as information patterns, they could theoretically transfer consciousness between bodies or storage media. Such technology would revolutionize human civilization. Death would become optional. Diseases could be cured. Aging could be reversed. But it would also create profound challenges. Who gets access? If only the wealthy can afford resurrection or life extension, society fractures into mortal and immortal classes. If everyone has access, population explodes and resources collapse. The ethical dilemmas are immense, which is perhaps why such technology, if it exists, remains sealed. Communication devices might also be hidden in the pyramids. The Anunnaki came from another world. They would need ways to communicate across interplanetary or even interstellar distances. Technology capable of sending signals faster than light, or through dimensions that bypass normal spacetime, would be invaluable. If we discovered such devices, we could potentially contact the Anunnaki wherever they are now. We could send messages to other star systems, searching for intelligent life. We could listen for signals from civilizations trying to reach us. But this carries risks. Broadcasting our presence to the cosmos might attract attention we do not want. The dark forest hypothesis in astrobiology suggests that advanced civilizations remain hidden because revealing themselves invites destruction from even more advanced civilizations. If we activate Anunnaki communication devices without understanding the protocols and dangers, we might signal our location to hostile forces. The Anunnaki might have sealed these devices specifically to prevent premature contact. Energy technology might be the most transformative discovery. The pyramids themselves might be power generators. Some researchers have proposed that the Great Pyramid functioned as a massive Tesla coil, drawing energy from the Earth's electromagnetic field and broadcasting it wirelessly. The shafts could be waveguides, the chamber's resonance cavities, the entire structure, a machine designed to convert ambient energy into usable power. If this is true, the knowledge of how it works would solve humanity's energy crisis. Free, unlimited power drawn from natural fields, with no fuel consumption and no pollution. Civilization would transform overnight. But releasing such technology would also crash the global economy. Trillions of dollars invested in oil, coal, and gas infrastructure would become worthless. Nations whose wealth depends on energy exports would collapse. The transition would be catastrophic unless carefully managed. Perhaps more importantly, unlimited energy in the wrong hands enables unlimited destruction. Weapons become more powerful. Industrial processes that are currently limited by energy costs become feasible regardless of environmental impact. A civilization with unlimited energy but limited wisdom could burn through Earth's resources even faster, or develop weapons that make nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. The Anunnaki might have sealed energy technology knowing that humanity needed to mature spiritually before gaining access to unlimited physical power. Navigation and transportation technology might exist in the pyramids. Devices that allow faster-than-light travel, or that manipulate gravity to move massive objects without conventional propulsion. The Anunnaki arrived on Earth from another world. They had spacecraft or something equivalent. If they left examples behind, or even just the blueprints, we could develop similar capabilities. Space travel would become practical. colonization of other planets would be achievable. Humanity could expand beyond Earth, ensuring our survival even if our homeworld faces catastrophe. But this technology could also enable escape for those who caused catastrophe. Elites could flee a dying planet, leaving the masses behind. Or nations could develop space-based weapons platforms, militarizing orbit in ways current treaties prevent. The strategic implications are as profound as the technological ones. Access to space changes everything about how civilization organizes itself. Manufacturing technology capable of manipulating matter at the atomic level would be revolutionary. If the Anunnaki could rearrange atoms, they could create any substance from raw materials. Food from carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Metals from common elements. Complex machines assembled molecule by molecule. This is what modern nanotechnology aspires to achieve, but we are decades or centuries away from mastery. If the pyramids contain working examples or detailed instructions, we could leap forward generations in capability. Again, the dangers parallel the benefits. Molecular manufacturing could end scarcity, but it could also enable the creation of weapons, surveillance devices, or self-replicating machines that consume resources uncontrollably. The Grey Goo scenario, where self-replicating nanobots convert all matter into copies of themselves, is a theoretical extinction risk. The Anunnaki would have understood these dangers. If they sealed such technology, they included safeguards. Or they designed the seals to open only when humanity demonstrates sufficient wisdom to avoid catastrophic misuse. Perhaps the most profound artifacts would be information storage devices containing the complete history of the Anunnaki, their origins, their motivations for coming to Earth, their interactions with humans over millennia, their reasons for leaving, and their plans for the future. Such a database would answer every question we have about our origins and purpose. It would confirm or disprove every religious text, every ancient myth, every alternative history theory. The truth would be undeniable, because it would come from the source. But truth can be destabilizing. If humanity discovered that we are genetically engineered slaves created to mine gold for alien overlords, how would we react? Existing power structures based on divine right or historical legitimacy would collapse. Religions built on the idea of a single creator god would face crisis. The psychological impact on billions of people could be devastating. The Anunnaki might have understood this. They might have chosen to let us develop our own mythologies and belief systems, even if those systems are built on incomplete or inaccurate information, because the alternative is too disruptive. Or perhaps they left information in staged releases, chambers within chambers, each requiring greater understanding to access. The first chambers might contain basic history and science, confirming their existence and providing foundational knowledge. Deeper chambers might contain advanced technology and detailed records. The innermost chambers might hold secrets so profound that only a truly mature civilization could handle them without catastrophe. This layered approach would allow humanity to progress gradually, integrating each revelation before moving to the next. The challenge is that we cannot know what is inside until we open the seals. Every theory about the contents is speculation. The tablets provide hints, but they were written thousands of years ago by people describing things beyond their understanding. They use the language and concepts available to them. When they describe weapons that flash like lightning, are they describing energy weapons? Or are they mythologizing something more mundane? When they describe tablets of destiny, are they describing actual records? Or are they personifying the concept of fate and divine will? We cannot be certain until we look, but looking requires accessing the sealed chambers. The void above the Grand Gallery, the spaces beyond the doors in the Queen's chamber shafts, the unexplored areas detected by ground-penetrating radar and muon scans, all of these remain closed. Egyptian authorities cite preservation concerns. The pyramids are fragile despite their apparent solidity. Any excavation risks damage to the structure or destruction of whatever might be inside. Drilling through stone creates heat, dust, and vibration. It could trigger collapses or contaminate delicate artifacts with modern materials. But preservation might not be the only concern. If authorities suspect what might be inside, they might be deliberately stalling, keeping the chambers sealed until they can control the narrative around any discoveries, or until they can secure the artifacts before the public learns of them, or until they develop technology to access the chambers without leaving evidence of entry. The 2017 discovery of the void sparked international interest, but years later, no official exploration has occurred. Why the delay? Conspiracy theories suggest that secret explorations have already happened, that governments or private organizations have accessed the sealed chambers using classified technology, that they have recovered artifacts and are studying them in hidden facilities, that the treasures of the Anunnaki are already in human hands, their capabilities being reverse engineered for military or industrial purposes. These theories are unprovable, but the reluctance of authorities to pursue obvious leads in such a high-profile discovery certainly raises questions. The pyramids do not exist in isolation. They are part of a global network of ancient structures that share common features. Megalithic sites built with massive stones, aligned to celestial bodies, constructed with knowledge that seems anachronistic for their supposed time periods. From Stonehenge in England to Machu Picchu in Peru, from the temples of Malta to the statues of Easter Island, ancient builders created monuments that encode astronomical knowledge and possibly serve functions beyond what conventional archaeology recognizes. These sites share patterns, many aligned to solstices or equinoxes, marking the sun's position at key points in the year. Some align to lunar cycles, tracking the moon's complex orbit with precision. Others point to specific stars, particularly bright stars that would have been significant for navigation or timekeeping. The alignments are not random. They are deliberate, requiring careful observation over long periods and mathematical calculations to implement. The amount of effort involved in creating these alignments suggests they served important purposes. A simple agricultural calendar could be maintained with wooden posts or painted markers. It would not require hauling 100-ton stones across vast distances and positioning them with millimeter precision. The megalithic structures must have served functions that justified the enormous investment of labor and resources. Religious functions, certainly, but potentially also practical functions that we no longer understand. Some researchers propose that these sites form a global grid, that their locations are not arbitrary but mathematically related, that lines connecting major sites create geometric patterns covering the Earth's surface. The most famous example is the ley line theory, which suggests that ancient sites align along straight paths across the landscape. Skeptics point out that with enough sites you can connect any subset with lines, and patterns will emerge by chance. But proponents argue that the specific sites connected by ley lines share common features, and that the patterns match known geometric principles like the Platonic solids or sacred geometry. If the Anunnaki built or influenced the construction of multiple sites worldwide, a global grid makes sense. They would want navigation markers, visible from orbit or from high altitude. They would want communication nodes capable of transmitting signals between different regions. They would want energy collection or distribution points, taking advantage of Earth's natural electromagnetic fields. A network of structures positioned at key locations, all built to similar specifications, could serve these purposes. The pyramids of Giza might be the central hub of this network. Located near the geographic center of Earth's landmass, they occupy a position from which signals could reach most of the planet. The Great Pyramid's mass and the electrical properties of its limestone and granite might function as an antenna or resonator, amplifying signals generated elsewhere or broadcasting power across the grid. The shafts pointing to specific stars might not be purely symbolic. They could be communication channels, sending and receiving information encoded in light or other electromagnetic frequencies. If this network exists, it might still be partially functional. Ancient sites around the world have reported electromagnetic anomalies. Compasses malfunction near certain stone circles. Electronic equipment experiences interference at megalithic temples. Visitors describe unusual sensations, tingling skin, or altered states of consciousness in specific chambers or at particular times of year. These effects could be geological, caused by underground water, mineral deposits, or natural radiation. Or they could indicate that ancient technology embedded in these sites still operates at some level. The idea that stone structures could function as technology seems absurd to modern sensibilities. We think of technology as metals, wires, circuits, and power sources. But stone has properties we often overlook. Quartz crystal, present in granite, generates electrical charge when subjected to pressure. This piezoelectric effect is used in modern devices, from watches to sensors. If the pyramids contain precisely positioned granite blocks, subjected to constant pressure from the mass above them, they could generate electrical currents. Limestone, the primary material of the pyramids, has different properties. It is porous and can absorb water. The Giza Plateau sits above aquifers, underground water sources that flow beneath the pyramids. Some researchers propose that water flowing through channels beneath or within the pyramid could generate electromagnetic fields through electrokinetic effects. Water moving through porous stone creates electrical potential differences. If the pyramid was designed to channel groundwater in specific ways, it could function as a natural generator. The combination of piezoelectric granite and electrokinetic limestone could create a power source requiring no fuel and no maintenance. The pyramid would generate electricity continuously as long as the underground water flowed and the pressure from its own mass remained constant. This power could be stored in capacitors, used to power devices within the pyramid, or broadcast wirelessly to receiving stations elsewhere. Nikola Tesla demonstrated wireless power transmission in the early 20th century, sending electrical energy through the air or ground without wires. The pyramids might use similar principles, but on a scale Tesla could only dream of. If the pyramids generate and broadcast power, where does it go? One hypothesis is that the entire Giza plateau functions as a transformer, stepping up or stepping down voltages, converting between different frequencies, and directing energy to specific locations. The Sphinx, with its water erosion patterns suggesting it was built when the area was wet, might have been constructed when the ancient water flows were stronger, serving as a component in the hydraulic system. The causeways connecting the pyramids might be channels for energy transmission, built from materials chosen for their conductive properties. Modern measurements have detected electrical anomalies at Giza. Researchers using voltmeters have recorded voltage differences between different parts of the Great Pyramid. The King's Chamber shows higher electrical potential than surrounding areas. The shafts conduct electrical current more readily than the surrounding stone. These measurements are often dismissed as random variations caused by environmental factors like humidity and temperature. But they could also indicate that the pyramid is generating power, even if we do not know how to tap into it. The cosmic clock hypothesis takes this further. It proposes that the pyramids and other ancient sites were designed to activate at specific times determined by celestial mechanics. When certain stars reach certain positions, when planets align in specific configurations, when the sun's position matches predefined coordinates, the network activates. Power flows through the grid, sealed chambers unlock, dormant technology awakens, and humanity receives a signal that it is time to access what has been hidden. This activation could be automatic. If the seals are designed to respond to electromagnetic frequencies or light wavelengths that occur only during specific astronomical conditions, no human intervention is needed. The cosmos itself provides the key. When Orion's belt reaches the same position it held in 10,500 BCE, when starlight enters the shafts at the precise angle encoded in their construction, the devices inside the pyramid respond. Crystals begin to vibrate, stones shift along hidden tracks, doors open that have been sealed for millennia. Or activation could require human participation. The cosmic alignment provides an opening, a window of time when the seals can be bypassed. But humans must still perform specific actions, speak certain words, perform particular rituals, align their consciousness with the frequencies the pyramid generates. The ancient Egyptian priests might have known these procedures, passing them down through initiation ceremonies. Mystery schools throughout history might preserve fragments of this knowledge, waiting for the moment when it becomes relevant again. The precession of the equinoxes provides a natural timing mechanism for such a system. The 25,920-year cycle means that stellar configurations repeat predictably. The Anunnaki could have designed the pyramids to activate at specific points in this cycle. They built them in one era, aligned them to the stars of that era, and set them to open again when the sky returns to the same configuration. We are currently in the transition between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius, a shift that occurs approximately every 2,160 years. If the pyramids were designed to activate during this transition, we might be living in the exact time period the Anunnaki anticipated. The Mayan calendar end date of the 21st of December 2012 generated enormous speculation about cosmic shifts and consciousness changes. The date came and went without obvious transformation, leading skeptics to dismiss it as New Age fantasy. But the Maya were sophisticated astronomers who tracked celestial cycles with remarkable precision. Their long count calendar, which reached a significant endpoint in 2012, might have been marking the same transition the pyramids encode. Not a sudden apocalypse, but the beginning of a period when conditions align for accessing ancient knowledge. If this interpretation is correct, we are in the window now. The cosmic clock has sounded its alarm. The seals are primed to open. What remains is for humanity to recognize the moment and act. But we must act wisely. Rushing into the pyramids with explosives and drilling equipment, treating them as obstacles rather than treasures, would be catastrophic. We might destroy what we seek to find. We might trigger defenses the Anunnaki built into the structures, seals that collapse chambers if approached incorrectly, or traps that protect the contents from the unworthy. The legends surrounding ancient sites often include warnings about curses and protective magic. The curse of the pharaohs, which supposedly killed archaeologists who opened Tutankhamun's tomb, is the most famous example. Rational explanations attribute deaths to fungal spores, bacteria, or simple coincidence. But what if some tombs and temples were deliberately contaminated or trapped? The Anunnaki had knowledge of biology and chemistry. They could have created pathogens that remain viable for thousands of years, activated when seals are broken. Or they could have used simpler methods, like unstable structures that collapse when disturbed, or toxic minerals that poison the air when exposed. Approaching the pyramids requires caution, respect, and preparation. We need technology that can access sealed spaces without damaging them. We need protective equipment to handle potential biological, chemical, or radioactive hazards. We need international cooperation to ensure that any discoveries benefit humanity as a whole rather than creating conflict. And we need spiritual preparation, a collective consciousness that approaches the pyramids with reverence rather than greed, seeking knowledge rather than power. Some researchers argue we are not ready, that humanity remains too divided, too violent, too short-sighted to handle Anunnaki technology responsibly. Wars continue, inequality grows, environmental destruction accelerates. In this context, giving us access to power beyond our current capabilities seems like handing loaded guns to children. The responsible choice might be to leave the pyramids sealed until we mature, to continue developing our own technology and wisdom through experience, earning our advancement rather than inheriting it. But others argue that we need the knowledge now, that humanity faces existential threats that require solutions beyond what we can develop on our own. Climate change accelerates, resources deplete, population grows, conflict escalates. If the pyramids contain energy technology, medical knowledge, or environmental restoration techniques, accessing them might be necessary for survival. Waiting for perfect wisdom means waiting forever. We must work with what we have, learning as we go, accepting the risks because the alternative is worse. The tension between these positions reflects the fundamental question the Anunnaki posed when they sealed the pyramids. Are humans worthy of their legacy? Can we handle godlike power without destroying ourselves and our world? The cosmic clock does not answer these questions. It merely marks the time when the test becomes available. The outcome depends entirely on our choices. What actions should we take? First, we must continue research using non-invasive methods. Muon scans, ground-penetrating radar, electromagnetic surveys, all the technologies that let us see inside stone without drilling. Map every void, every density anomaly, every unusual feature. Build complete models of the pyramid's internal structures. Understand what we are looking at before we attempt to access it. Second, we must preserve what exists. Tourists, pollution, and time erode the pyramids. The casing stones that once covered them have been removed, exposing the core blocks to weathering. The causeways and temples surrounding the pyramids deteriorate. Without active preservation, the pyramids might not survive another 1,000 years. If they are time capsules waiting for humanity to mature, losing them to neglect would be tragedy. Third, we must educate. The pyramids and the questions they raise should be part of global consciousness, not just academic subjects for specialists, but topics everyone considers. What does it mean if we are not alone in the universe? How should we respond if we discover proof of ancient astronauts? What responsibilities come with accessing advanced technology? These are not abstract questions. They are immediate practical concerns if the pyramids contain what the tablets suggest. Fourth, we must develop international frameworks, agreements on how discoveries will be shared, protocols for accessing sites that might contain dangerous materials, ethical guidelines for using any technology we find. The pyramids are located in Egypt, but they concern all of humanity. Whatever is inside them should not become the property of a single nation or group. We need structures in place before we open the seals, or the aftermath will be chaos. The cosmic clock ticks. The stars move through their cycles. The procession continues, bringing the sky gradually toward configurations that match the ancient alignments. We have time, but not unlimited time. Within our lifetimes, or our children's lifetimes, the conditions the Anunnaki encoded into the pyramids will be met. The seals will be primed, the chambers will be ready to open, and we will face the choice of whether to proceed. That choice will define us as a species. It will demonstrate whether we have grown beyond our violent, tribal origins, whether we can cooperate in pursuit of knowledge rather than compete for advantage, whether we can handle power responsibly or will misuse it as we have misused so many tools before. The Anunnaki left us a test. The pyramids are the examination hall. The cosmic clock announces when the test begins. How we perform determines our future. If the pyramids contain treasures as significant as the tablets suggest, the Anunnaki would not have left them unguarded. Physical barriers, sealed chambers, and massive stone blocks provide passive protection. But active defenses might also exist. Systems that monitor the pyramids, detect intrusion attempts, and respond to protect the contents. These guardians might be mechanical, biological, or even consciousness-based, depending on what technology the Anunnaki possessed and what methods they deemed most reliable over millennia. Mechanical guardians could take many forms. Autonomous devices programmed to maintain the pyramids and defend against threats. These need not be sophisticated robots as we imagine them. Simple mechanisms triggered by weight, pressure, or movement could accomplish much. A stone slab that slides into place when someone enters a forbidden passage. A chamber that floods with water or sand when seals are broken. Walls that shift, creating mazes that disorient intruders. The pyramid's internal structure already includes features that seem designed to confuse, like the Grand Gallery's soaring height and the descending passage that leads to rough, unfinished chambers. These might serve defensive purposes, channeling explorers away from what truly matters. Some researchers have reported strange experiences inside the pyramids, equipment malfunctions that cannot be explained by environmental factors, batteries draining rapidly, electronic devices shutting down without apparent cause, electromagnetic interference that disrupts communications. These could be natural phenomena. The pyramid's mass and materials create unusual magnetic fields. Water flowing beneath the structure generates electrical currents. Or these could be active defenses, systems that detect electronic devices and disable them, preventing modern technology from reaching certain areas. There are accounts, mostly from early explorers and dismissed by official archaeology, of hidden mechanisms within the pyramids. Stones that move when touched in specific sequences, passages that open only under particular conditions, chambers that were accessible during one exploration but sealed during the next. Conventional explanations attribute these to faulty memory, exaggeration, or hoaxes. But if the pyramids contain guardian systems that respond to attempts at entry, changing configurations to protect secrets makes sense. Biological guardians present another possibility: the curse of the pharaohs. The idea that tombs contain supernatural protections that kill those who disturb them might have roots in reality. Not supernatural curses, but biological weapons. Fungal spores that cause respiratory illness. Bacteria that produce toxins. Viruses preserved in dry, sealed conditions, viable for thousands of years. When tombs are opened, these microorganisms are released into the air. The first people to enter breathe them in and fall ill. To ancient observers, this appears as a curse. To modern understanding, it is microbiology. The Anunnaki would have known how to create and preserve such biological agents. If they wanted to discourage human intrusion, contaminating chambers with pathogens would be effective. The key would be making the contamination targeted. You would not want the entire pyramid to be lethal, or maintenance would be impossible. But specific chambers, particularly those containing the most valuable or dangerous artifacts, could be protected this way. Signs warning of danger might have been placed at entry points. Over time, these signs would be lost or misunderstood. The protections would remain, unseen and unrecognized, until triggered by unfortunate explorers. Modern excavations take biological contamination seriously. Archaeologists wear protective equipment when opening sealed spaces. They test the air for pathogens before entering. They use remote cameras when possible, viewing chambers before committing to physical entry. These precautions reduce risk but do not eliminate it. If the Anunnaki created biological defenses specifically to resist ancient Egyptian countermeasures, those defenses might be sophisticated enough to bypass modern protections as well. Radiation presents another potential hazard. Certain minerals emit radiation over thousands of years as they undergo radioactive decay. If the Anunnaki placed radioactive materials in specific chambers, either as power sources or as deliberate defenses, explorers could be exposed to dangerous levels of radiation. Early archaeologists working in the pyramids would not have had radiation detectors. They could have suffered exposure without realizing it, developing cancers or other illnesses years later. The connection to pyramid exploration would not have been obvious, allowing the radiation source to remain hidden. Some researchers have detected elevated radiation levels in certain parts of the Great Pyramid. These measurements are controversial and have not been consistently replicated. Skeptics attribute them to radon gas, which occurs naturally in limestone caverns and basements worldwide. But if the anomalies are real and localized to specific chambers, they might indicate either natural radioactive minerals concentrated by deliberate design or artificial radioactive materials placed by the Anunnaki. Consciousness-based guardians represent the most esoteric possibility. If the Anunnaki understood consciousness as a manipulable force, they could have created defenses that operate on psychological or spiritual levels. Thought forms, entities created from concentrated will and intention, programmed to guard the pyramids. These would not be physical beings, but patterns of energy or information that interact with human consciousness. Encounters with such guardians would feel like supernatural experiences, visions, voices, overwhelming emotions of fear or awe. The mind interprets these experiences according to cultural context. Ancient Egyptians would perceive gods or demons. Modern explorers might experience hallucinations or panic attacks. This sounds like fantasy, but consciousness-based technology might be plausible if consciousness itself is a fundamental aspect of reality, rather than merely an emergent property of brain chemistry. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that observation affects reality, that consciousness plays a role in collapsing wave functions and determining outcomes. If this is true, beings who understand consciousness deeply could create technologies that interface with it directly. Devices that project thoughts, alter perceptions, or create experiences indistinguishable from physical reality. The pyramid's resonant properties could support consciousness-based effects. Specific frequencies of sound and electromagnetic radiation are known to affect brain function. Infrasound, frequencies below the range of human hearing, can cause anxiety, disorientation, and hallucinations. The pyramid's chambers might resonate at infrasonic frequencies when exposed to certain vibrations, creating psychological effects in anyone present. This could be incidental, a side effect of the structure's design, or it could be deliberate, a defense mechanism that makes intruders feel overwhelming dread, driving them away without physical harm. Reports from people who have spent time in the king's chamber describe unusual experiences, sensations of floating or weightlessness, visions of light or geometric patterns, feelings of profound peace or terror. Time distortion, where minutes feel like hours or vice versa. These are often attributed to oxygen deprivation, since the chamber is poorly ventilated and many people experience lightheadedness, or to psychological factors, the power of suggestion combined with the chamber's imposing atmosphere. But they could also result from infrasound, electromagnetic fields, or consciousness interfacing technology we do not yet understand. If guardians exist, whether mechanical, biological, or consciousness-based, they would need power sources. Solar energy would be unreliable inside sealed chambers. Chemical batteries would degrade over millennia. Nuclear power using conventional fission would require fuel that decays over time, though some isotopes have half-lives long enough to remain active for tens of thousands of years. More exotic power sources, like zero-point energy extraction or controlled matter-antimatter reactions, would be required for truly long-term operation. The pyramids themselves might be the power source. If they generate electricity through piezoelectric and electrokinetic effects, as some researchers propose, that power could run guardian systems. The flow would be continuous and passive, requiring no fuel or maintenance. Guardian devices connected to the pyramid's internal power grid would operate indefinitely. When intruders approach protected areas, sensors detect them and activate countermeasures. The systems do not think or make decisions in any complex sense. They simply execute their programming, repeating the same defensive actions they have performed for thousands of years whenever triggered. What form would these guardians take if we encountered them? If they are mechanical, we might see doors closing, stones shifting, or chambers flooding. If they are biological, we might experience illness or encounter preserved organisms released from containment. If they are consciousness-based, we might feel psychological pressure, overwhelming emotions, or hallucinations. Or we might experience all of these simultaneously, a layered defense that attacks on multiple fronts, maximizing the chance of repelling intruders. The question is whether these defenses distinguish between people. Do they attack anyone who enters forbidden areas, or do they recognize specific individuals or groups as authorized? If the Anunnaki designed the Guardians to allow their descendants access, people with specific genetic markers might pass safely, while others are attacked. This would create a class system where some humans can explore the pyramids freely, while others face dangers. Bloodlines that carry Anunnaki genetics would be the keepers of the keys, the only ones capable of reaching the deepest secrets. This concept appears in myths and legends. The chosen one who can wield the magic sword, the prophesied hero who alone can enter the sacred temple, the bloodline of kings descended from gods. These stories might preserve knowledge of genetic requirements for accessing Anunnaki sites. The medieval Grail legends, which describe a sacred object hidden in a castle guarded by tests and challenges, might be allegorical memories of the pyramids and their guardians. The knights who seek the Grail represent seekers of ancient knowledge. The tests represent the pyramid's defenses. The Grail itself represents whatever artifact or wisdom lies in the sealed chambers. If genetic recognition is part of the Guardian system, modern genetic testing might reveal who has access. People could submit DNA samples for analysis, searching for markers that match Anunnaki genetics. This assumes we know what those markers look like, which we do not without a reference sample. But if we opened a sealed chamber and found preserved Anunnaki genetic material, we could sequence it and search for matches in the human population. Those with the highest percentage of matches would be candidates for accessing deeper chambers. This creates ethical nightmares. It implies that some humans are more valuable or worthy than others based on genetics. It provides justification for elitism and exclusion. Throughout history, claims of superior bloodlines have led to oppression, slavery, and genocide. The idea that pyramids or ancient knowledge are accessible only to genetic elites is dangerous regardless of its truth. Even if the Anunnaki designed the system this way, we would be morally obligated to find methods that allow all humans access, not just those who happen to carry specific genes. Perhaps the genetic requirement is not absolute. It might be one of several possible keys. Genetics grants automatic access, but others can gain entry through knowledge, consciousness, development, or technology. The Guardians might test for multiple criteria. If you have the right genes, you pass. If you do not, but you understand the correct mathematics or can achieve the correct brainwave state, you also pass. This multi-layered system would ensure that worthy individuals can access the pyramids regardless of ancestry, while still giving advantage to those carrying Anunnaki heritage. The Guardians might also be less about preventing access and more about testing readiness. Instead of killing or repelling intruders, they could present challenges, puzzles that require specific knowledge to solve, situations that demand ethical choices, experiences that test psychological stability. Those who pass the tests proceed deeper. Those who fail are turned away but not harmed. This approach aligns with mystery school traditions, where initiates face trials before gaining access to secret knowledge. The trials prove they are ready. The Pyramid's Guardians might operate on the same principle. What happens if we approach the pyramids with hostile intent? If military forces attempt to breach sealed chambers using explosives or drilling, do the Guardians respond more aggressively? The system might distinguish between curious explorers and armed invaders, calibrating its response accordingly. Peaceful researchers face non-lethal deterrence. Armed forces face full defensive capabilities. This would explain why some early explorers reported strange experiences but survived, while any covert military operations that might have occurred remain unexposed. Those who came with violence encountered violence and did not emerge to tell their stories. Or the Guardians might have degraded over time. Systems designed to last thousands of years might still operate, but imperfectly. Sensors might misfire, mechanisms might stick, biological agents might have lost potency. The pyramids would still be defended, but the defenses would be unpredictable. Some areas might be completely safe because the Guardians failed. Other areas might be more dangerous than intended because malfunctions cause overreaction. Exploring under these conditions would be like navigating a minefield. Each step could be safe or catastrophic, with no way to know in advance. The Sphinx, positioned in front of the pyramids, might serve as the first guardian, not through active defenses but through symbolism and positioning. In Egyptian mythology, the Sphinx asked a riddle. Those who answered correctly could pass. Those who failed were destroyed. The riddle of the Sphinx represents the test of worthiness. Do you possess sufficient wisdom to be granted access? The physical Sphinx at Giza might mark the entrance to the pyramid complex, a warning that beyond this point, you enter sacred ground protected by forces you must understand before proceeding. The Sphinx itself might contain secrets. Tunnels and chambers beneath it have been detected but not fully explored. Some researchers claim these chambers connect to the pyramids via underground passages. If true, the Sphinx could be the gatehouse. The actual entrance to the deepest chambers might not be through the pyramids themselves, but through the Sphinx. The pyramids draw attention, serving as decoys. The real treasures lie beneath the Sphinx, accessed only by those who understand the symbolic and physical relationship between the two structures. As we develop technology to bypass or disable Guardian systems, we face a question. Should we? If the Anunnaki place defenses for good reasons, circumventing them might be unwise. The defenses protect not just the Anunnaki's property but also humanity itself. What is sealed in the pyramids might be dangerous. The Guardians might be there to protect us from our own curiosity, ensuring we do not access things that would harm us. Disabling them could be like turning off a nuclear reactor's safety systems. Technically feasible, but catastrophically unwise. Yet the Guardians also prevent progress. If healing technologies or energy solutions are locked behind defenses we cannot pass, disabling those defenses might be morally necessary. Humanity suffers while solutions sit inaccessible in sealed chambers. At what point does the potential benefit outweigh the risks? This is not a question with easy answers. It requires weighing immediate needs against long-term consequences, balancing hope for beneficial discoveries against fear of dangerous ones. The Guardians watch and wait. Whether they are mechanical systems, biological hazards, or consciousness-based entities, they perform the task the Anunnaki assigned them: protect what has been sealed, test those who seek entry, ensure that access is granted only to the worthy, the prepared, the ready. We stand at the threshold, developing technologies and knowledge that might allow us to pass. But passing the Guardians is not the end, it is the beginning. What lies beyond them will challenge us in ways we cannot yet imagine. The Sumerian tablets describe the Anunnaki as coming from a world called Nibiru, which follows an elliptical orbit that brings it into the inner solar system once every 3,600 years. During these passages, Nibiru comes close enough to Earth for travel between the two worlds to be practical. When Nibiru is distant, at the far end of its orbit, travel becomes difficult or impossible with the technology available to the Anunnaki. This orbital cycle explains why they did not maintain constant contact. They visited Earth during close approach, then left when Nibiru's orbit carried it away, returning again, 3,600 years later. Modern astronomy has not confirmed Nibiru's existence. Searches for planets beyond Neptune have detected objects in the Kuiper Belt and Oort cloud, but nothing matching the Sumerian descriptions. However, anomalies in the orbits of distant objects suggest the gravitational influence of a massive planet that has not been directly observed. This hypothetical Planet 9 would be 5 to 10 times Earth's mass, orbiting at a distance of 400 to 800 astronomical units. Its orbital period would be 10,000 to 20,000 years, much longer than the 3,600 years described for Nibiru. Still, the possibility of undiscovered planets in the outer solar system remains scientifically viable. If Nibiru exists and follows the described orbit, when was its last approach? The tablet suggests significant Anunnaki activity occurred around 2000 BCE. Historical records from that period describe catastrophic events: climate change, collapse of civilizations across the Mediterranean and Near East, the fall of the Akkadian Empire, the end of Egypt's Old Kingdom. These upheavals might have coincided with Nibiru's gravitational effects, which could disrupt Earth's climate, trigger earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, and cause sea level changes as tidal forces interact with our oceans. If Nibiru's orbit is 3,600 years, and the last significant pass was around 2000 BCE, the next approach would occur around 1600 CE. Historical records from that period also show significant events: the Little Ice Age, religious upheavals with the Protestant Reformation, expansion of European powers, and colonization of the Americas, but no clear evidence of catastrophic events matching what might be expected from a planetary close approach. Either Nibiru's orbit is longer than 3,600 years, or the gravitational effects are less severe than assumed, or the tablets describe events that have not yet occurred. Another interpretation is that the 3,600-year cycle is symbolic rather than literal. Many ancient texts use numbers in symbolic ways, representing concepts rather than precise measurements. The number 3,600 held significance in Sumerian mathematics, being 60 squared. It might represent a long period of time without specifying the exact duration. Nibiru's orbit could be much longer, measured in tens of thousands of years. In this case, the Anunnaki's last departure might have occurred at the end of the last ice age, around 10,500 BCE, matching the date encoded in the pyramid's stellar alignments. If that is the timeline, Nibiru might not return for thousands of years yet. The Anunnaki would have known they were leaving for an extended period. They would have made arrangements to preserve their legacy during that time. The pyramids and other megalithic sites would serve as markers, reminders, and storage facilities. The sealed chambers would contain everything necessary for humanity to continue developing and for the Anunnaki to resume their activities whenever they returned. But there is another possibility. Perhaps not all Anunnaki left. The tablets describe some choosing to remain on Earth, intermarrying with humans, living among us as kings and heroes. Their descendants would carry Anunnaki genetics, diluted over generations but still present. These bloodlines might have preserved knowledge passed down from their divine ancestors. Secret societies, royal families, and priesthoods might be the custodians of Anunnaki wisdom, waiting for the return of their forebears. If this is true, the return might not be a distant future event, but something already underway. The Anunnaki might be here now, living among us, observing our development, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Or they might be approaching, traveling from Nibiru as it swings back through the solar system, preparing to re-establish contact. The increase in UFO sightings since the mid-20th century might be evidence of this return. Craft in our skies, observing our cities, our military facilities, our technological progress. Not aliens from distant star systems, but the Anunnaki, monitoring their creation, assessing our readiness for the next phase. This interpretation aligns with ancient prophecies present in multiple cultures: the return of the gods, the second coming, the arrival of the Messiah. These might all be cultural memories of the Anunnaki's promise to return. Different civilizations interpreted the promise through their own religious frameworks, but the core message is the same: the gods who shaped humanity will come back. When they do, a new age will begin. An age of revelation, transformation, and either salvation or judgment, depending on how humanity has developed in their absence. What would the return look like? If Nibiru approaches, we would detect it. Modern telescopes scan the sky continuously. An object the size of a planet entering the inner solar system would be visible months or years before it arrived. Astronomers would track its trajectory, predict its closest approach, and calculate its gravitational effects on Earth. The public would be informed. Preparations would be made. Or would they? If authorities believed the return of Nibiru would trigger panic, they might suppress the information, allowing only a select few to prepare while the general population remains ignorant. The gravitational effects could be severe. Nibiru passing near Earth would create tidal forces, potentially triggering earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis. The planet's magnetic field would interact with Earth's, causing geomagnetic storms that disrupt power grids and satellite communications. If Nibiru has a debris field, comets or asteroids in its orbit, these could impact Earth, causing regional or global catastrophes. The flood legends might be memories of such impacts from Nibiru's previous passes. The next approach could bring similar disasters. But the Anunnaki's return would not be passive. They would not simply watch as their previous creations suffer from Nibiru's effects. They would intervene. Ships would descend from the approaching planet, carrying Anunnaki prepared to help or evaluate or harvest depending on their intentions. They would contact human authorities, reveal themselves publicly, or remain hidden while working through chosen intermediaries. The form of contact would depend on their assessment of humanity's readiness and their own goals. If they judge humanity favorably, the return could be benevolent. They might share technology openly, helping us solve our problems and ascend to a higher level of civilization. The sealed chambers in the pyramids would be opened, their contents revealed and explained. Anunnaki teachers would guide us in using what has been hidden, ensuring we do not misuse it. We would transition from a species struggling with basic survival to one capable of interstellar existence, joining a galactic community we did not know existed. If they judge us harshly, the return could be hostile. They might view humanity as a failed experiment, creatures who have misused the gift of intelligence and proven ourselves unworthy of their legacy. In this scenario, they could initiate a culling, reducing human population to manageable levels or wiping us out entirely to start fresh. The sealed chambers would remain sealed, or their contents would be removed, taken back to Nibiru or destroyed. Earth would be reset, prepared for a new attempt at creating a species worthy of Anunnaki heritage. More likely is a mixed scenario. The Anunnaki, like humans, might have diverse opinions and factions. Some would support humanity, arguing we have exceeded expectations despite our flaws. Others would call for intervention or elimination, viewing us as dangerous or disappointing. The internal debate among returning Anunnaki would mirror the conflicts described in ancient tablets: Enki versus Enlil, mercy versus justice, nurturing versus controlling. The resolution would determine humanity's fate. Another possibility is that the return has already occurred, but not in the dramatic way we expect. The Anunnaki might be here in subtle ways, influencing events through carefully placed individuals, advanced technology disguised as human innovation, or manipulation of global systems to guide our development. This would explain the rapid technological progress of the last century. We went from horse-drawn carriages to spacecraft in a single lifetime, from calculating machines to artificial intelligence in decades. The acceleration seems too rapid to be purely human achievement. Perhaps we have had help. Guidance from Anunnaki working behind the scenes, preparing us for open contact when the time is right. UFO encounters, particularly those involving contact with humanoid beings, might be Anunnaki interactions. The descriptions provided by contactees often mention beings who look human but possess advanced knowledge and technology. They deliver messages about humanity's potential and warnings about our destructive tendencies. They describe coming from distant worlds but also hint at long connections to Earth. These accounts, usually dismissed as hallucinations or hoaxes, might be genuine encounters with Anunnaki preparing us for the larger revelation to come. The pyramids play a central role in the return scenario. If they are sealed time capsules designed to be opened when the Anunnaki return, the seals might be keyed to Nibiru's approach. When the planet reaches a certain distance from Earth, electromagnetic or gravitational effects trigger mechanisms in the pyramids. Chambers open automatically, devices activate, signals are sent. The pyramids become beacons, announcing to the returning Anunnaki that their installations on Earth remain functional and ready. Or the pyramids might need to be opened by humans as a signal to the Anunnaki that we are ready. The act of successfully accessing the sealed chambers, of bypassing the guardians and understanding the astronomical alignments, would demonstrate that humanity has achieved sufficient development. The Anunnaki, monitoring from a distance, would see this accomplishment and recognize it as the sign they have waited for. They would then accelerate their return, arriving not on Nibiru's slow orbital schedule but by other means, traveling across space to meet their maturing creation. This creates urgency around pyramid exploration. If opening the seals serves as a signal, we might inadvertently summon the Anunnaki before we are truly ready, or we might delay too long, missing the window when they are close enough to respond. The cosmic clock described earlier becomes critically important. We must align our actions with astronomical timing, ensuring we open the chambers when the conditions are right for contact to proceed safely and beneficially. What should we hope to find in the pyramids to prepare for the return? Instructions, certainly. Guidance on how to communicate with the Anunnaki, what protocols to follow, what questions to ask. Historical records that explain their culture, politics, and factions, allowing us to understand who we are dealing with and how to navigate potential conflicts among them. technology that can be activated to signal our readiness or to defend ourselves if the return proves hostile. Medical knowledge would be crucial. If the Anunnaki bring diseases we have no immunity to, or if their biology is toxic to ours in ways we do not expect, sealed chambers might contain information on treatments and protections. The reverse is also true. Human pathogens might affect Anunnaki who have been away from Earth for millennia. Knowing this in advance could prevent accidental biological catastrophes during first contact. Diplomatic frameworks might be encoded. The Anunnaki would have established protocols for interacting with their creation. These might be preserved in the pyramids, providing a template for how contact should proceed, what rituals or ceremonies are expected, what gifts or offerings are appropriate, what language or symbolic systems should be used for communication. Following these protocols might smooth the return, demonstrating respect and continuity with ancient traditions. Most importantly, we need to understand their expectations. What do the Anunnaki want from us? Why did they create humanity? What purpose were we designed to serve? If that purpose is mining gold or providing labor, are we willing to resume that role? If it is something else, perhaps serving as caretakers for Earth or as a genetic experiment to create new forms of conscious life, how do we fulfill that purpose? The pyramids might contain the Anunnaki's original charter for humanity, the mission statement they gave us at creation. Knowing this could help us prepare for the return in ways that align with their intentions. Or we might discover that we have already fulfilled our purpose, that the Anunnaki's plan was for us to develop independently, to become a self-sustaining civilization capable of surviving without them. In this scenario, the return is not about reasserting control, but about checking on a completed project. They come to see what we have become, to offer guidance if requested, but ultimately to acknowledge us as equals. The pyramids would then contain graduation materials, knowledge that transitions us from dependent creation to independent partner. The uncertainty is perhaps the greatest challenge. We do not know what the Anunnaki want because they left thousands of years ago and have not communicated clearly since. The tablets are open to interpretation. The pyramids are sealed. We must prepare for multiple scenarios simultaneously, hoping for benevolent contact while guarding against hostile intentions, seeking to access pyramid contents while respecting the dangers they might contain, developing our own capabilities while remaining humble enough to learn from those who created us. The return, whether it occurs in our lifetime or in distant generations, will be the defining moment of human history. Everything before it will be prologue. Everything after will be transformation. The pyramids stand as monuments to that future moment, built by gods to bridge the gap between their departure and their return. When they open, when the seals break and the chambers reveal their contents, humanity will step across a threshold. We will learn who we really are, where we came from, and what we are meant to become, and we will face the judgment of our creators, hoping we have proven worthy of the legacy they left behind. As we explore the possibilities of what lies sealed within the pyramids, we must also consider what opening them means for human consciousness itself. The knowledge contained in these ancient structures is not merely technical or historical, it is transformative. Learning that we are genetically engineered beings, created by advanced visitors from another world, fundamentally changes how we see ourselves. Our origin story, whether religious or scientific, is rewritten. Our place in the cosmos shifts. We are no longer the crown of natural evolution or the unique creation of a divine deity. We are something else entirely. This revelation would trigger what psychologists call a paradigm shift. Our entire framework for understanding reality would need to be rebuilt. Religious believers would have to reconcile their faith with evidence of ancient astronauts. Scientists would have to incorporate non-terrestrial intelligence into theories of human development. Philosophers would need to re-examine questions of free will, purpose, and meaning in light of our engineered origins. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. It would be traumatic for many, liberating for others, but transformative for all. Human history is full of paradigm shifts, moments when our understanding of reality changed dramatically. The realization that Earth orbits the Sun, not the reverse. The discovery that species evolve rather than being fixed creations. The revelation that time and space are relative, not absolute. Each shift faced resistance from those invested in the old paradigm. Each eventually became accepted as evidence accumulated. But the scale of those shifts pales in comparison to what disclosure of Anunnaki involvement would represent. We would need to ask difficult questions. If the Anunnaki created us, are we responsible for our actions? Can we be blamed for violence and cruelty if these traits were programmed into us? Or are we accountable for transcending our original design, for choosing virtue despite being engineered as workers? The answers affect not just philosophy but law, ethics, and governance. Our systems assume human autonomy and moral responsibility. If those assumptions are false, the systems need revision. We would need to confront our relationship with our creators. Are we grateful for being brought into existence, even if our origin was utilitarian rather than loving? Or are we angry about being created as slaves, used for purposes not our own? Do we owe the Anunnaki allegiance as children owe parents, or are we free agents, entitled to chart our own course regardless of their intentions? These questions parallel theological debates about humanity's relationship with God, but with a crucial difference. The Anunnaki are not omnipotent or omniscient. They are powerful but not divine. They can be questioned, resisted, or even opposed. This realization might be the most important gift the pyramids offer. Not technology or healing or extended lifespans, but liberation. The knowledge that our gods are merely advanced beings, not ultimate powers. That we can negotiate with them as equals, or at least as junior partners, rather than worshipping them as infinitely superior. That our future is not predetermined by divine plan, but open to our choices. The pyramids, by revealing the truth of our origins, might free us from both religious dogma and scientific materialism, allowing us to see ourselves clearly for the first time. But this freedom comes with responsibility. If there is no ultimate authority, no God who defines right and wrong, then we must define these ourselves. We must create meaning and purpose rather than discovering them. We must build ethical systems not on revelation but on reason and empathy. We must decide what kind of beings we want to become without being able to appeal to higher powers for guidance. This existential burden might be more than many people can handle. The psychological comfort of belief in a divine plan, even if that plan is mysterious or harsh, is powerful. Removing it could trigger widespread despair or nihilism. This is perhaps why the pyramids remain sealed, not because we lack the technology to open them, but because we lack the psychological resilience to handle what they contain. The Anunnaki understood that premature revelation could shatter human civilization. They designed the seals to open only when we have developed sufficient maturity, when we can accept the truth of our origins without losing our sense of purpose or value, when we can embrace both the freedom and the responsibility that comes with knowing we are cosmic orphans, created by beings who may or may not return. How do we develop that maturity? Not through technology alone. We can build scanning devices and drilling equipment, but these do not prepare us psychologically for revelation. Maturity comes from spiritual and philosophical development, from learning to find meaning in a universe that does not provide it for us, from building ethical systems based on empathy and reason rather than divine command, from accepting uncertainty without needing absolute answers, from finding value in existence itself regardless of whether that existence was planned by gods or emerged from blind evolution. The pyramids might contain tests of this maturity, not physical puzzles or genetic markers, but philosophical challenges, questions that have no single right answer, only responses that reveal the questioner's values and reasoning. A being approaching a sealed chamber might be asked, what is the purpose of consciousness? Why does suffering exist? What obligations do creators have to their creations? What obligations do creations have to their creators? The answers do not unlock doors directly, but they demonstrate whether the questioner has thought deeply about these issues, whether they can handle knowledge that makes such questions urgent rather than abstract. This would explain why some explorers have reported strange encounters in the pyramids, visions or voices asking questions, experiences that felt like tests of character or wisdom. These are dismissed as hallucinations caused by oxygen deprivation or suggestion. But what if they are real? What if the pyramids contain systems that probe consciousness, assessing readiness on levels deeper than physical capability? A person could have all the right tools and all the right genes, but if they lack philosophical depth, the guardians turn them away, not through force, but through experiences that make them choose to leave. The collective consciousness of humanity also matters. Individual readiness is not enough if civilization as a whole remains immature. One wise person accessing Anunnaki technology while surrounded by billions who are not ready creates catastrophe. The technology could be stolen, reverse-engineered by those with ill intent, or used in ways the original finder never intended. The pyramids might be designed to open only when human civilization reaches a threshold. Not when a few individuals are ready, but when enough of us have achieved sufficient wisdom that dangerous knowledge can be safely integrated. How do we measure collective readiness? Perhaps through our treatment of each other. A civilization that still wages wars, that allows billions to suffer in poverty while others hoard wealth, that destroys its own environment for short-term gain. Such a civilization is not ready for godlike power. The Anunnaki would have understood this. They would have designed the seals to open only when we demonstrate through our actions that we can handle what we find. This creates a feedback loop. We cannot access the pyramids until we mature. But maturity requires solving problems that might be unsolvable without the technology hidden in the pyramids. We need energy solutions to address climate change, but those solutions might be sealed away. We need medical knowledge to cure diseases, but that knowledge is inaccessible. We need philosophical insights to build better societies, But those insights wait behind sealed doors. How do we break this cycle? Perhaps the cycle is the test. The Anunnaki are not looking for humanity to be perfect. They are looking for humanity to try, to struggle with our limitations, to develop our own solutions even when they are imperfect, to build ethical systems even when we lack absolute truth, to seek knowledge even when we know it might be dangerous. The pyramids might open not when we solve all our problems, but when we demonstrate that we are committed to solving them. When we show that we will not give up, that we will keep reaching for better versions of ourselves even without guarantee of success. If this is true, then our current era might be exactly the time the Anunnaki anticipated. We face existential threats, climate change, nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence, biotechnology. Any of these could destroy us. But we are also making unprecedented progress. Global communication, scientific advancement, slowly growing awareness that we are one species on one planet, that our divisions are artificial and our commonalities profound. We stand at a knife's edge. We could fall into catastrophe or rise to new heights. This is precisely the moment when opening the pyramids would matter most. The knowledge inside could tip the balance. Energy technology could solve climate change. Medical advances could extend lifespans and cure diseases. Communication devices could connect us to cosmic civilization. But that same knowledge could be weaponized, monopolized, or misused. Everything depends on whether we approach what we find with wisdom or with greed, with cooperation or with competition, with humility or with hubris. The Anunnaki left us a choice, not a destiny. The pyramids are not a rescue package, automatically deployed when we reach crisis. They are an opportunity, a chance to access knowledge that could help us, but only if we are willing to use it responsibly. If we open them seeking power, we will find weapons and be destroyed by them. If we open them seeking profit, we will find technologies we can exploit, but the exploitation will fracture civilization. If we open them seeking wisdom, we might find what we need to transcend our limitations. This choice extends to how we remember the Anunnaki. Are they our creators whom we should worship? Our masters whom we should serve? Our ancestors whom we should honor? Our enemies whom we should resist? The answer shapes everything that follows. If we see them as gods, we remain children forever, waiting for them to return and tell us what to do. If we see them as slavers, we become rebels, defining ourselves through opposition rather than creating our own identity. If we see them as teachers, we honor their gift of knowledge while charting our own course. The healthiest relationship might be to see them as neither gods nor devils, but as beings who played a role in our development and have now stepped back. They gave us capabilities. They gave us a start, but what we do with those gifts is up to us. We are not obligated to fulfill their original purpose for us. We are not bound by their plans. We are free to become whatever we choose, taking from our Anunnaki heritage what serves us and leaving behind what does not. This perspective allows gratitude without servitude. We can acknowledge that we exist because they created us, while insisting on our right to self-determination. We can study their knowledge while developing our own. We can appreciate their gifts while refusing to be defined by them. The pyramids become not a temple to our makers, but a library left by our teachers. We visit it to learn, not to worship. We take what we need and return to our own lives, our own purposes, our own evolution. But to achieve this balanced perspective requires maturity. We must overcome the human tendency to either worship or demonize those with power over us. And first, we must develop enough self-worth that we do not need gods to give us value, while maintaining enough humility that we do not arrogantly dismiss those who shaped us. This psychological and spiritual development might be the true purpose of the seals, not to keep us away from knowledge, but to ensure that when we access it, we do so as mature beings capable of integrating it healthily. The awakening is not a single moment, but a process. As more people understand that we might be created beings, that the pyramids might contain revolutionary knowledge, that the Anunnaki might return, consciousness shifts. Some will resist, clinging to familiar beliefs. Others will embrace the new paradigm too quickly, without thinking through implications. Most will fall somewhere in between, gradually adjusting their worldview as evidence accumulates and becomes undeniable. This gradual awakening might be ideal. Sudden revelation shocks the system. Gradual disclosure allows adjustment. The pyramids remaining partially sealed, with information trickling out through scientific studies and archaeological discoveries, might be the Anunnaki's design. Not a single apocalyptic unveiling, but a slow drip of truth that humanity can absorb over decades or centuries. Each generation gets a little more, building on what the previous generation learned, until eventually we are ready for full disclosure. In this view, the muon scans revealing hidden voids are not accidents but part of the plan. The pyramids are designed to reveal themselves progressively as our technology improves. Simple tools show nothing. More advanced instruments reveal hints. Still better technology shows hidden chambers. Eventually, We will have the capability to access those chambers, but only after we have spent years knowing they exist, discussing what they might contain, preparing ourselves psychologically for revelation. The awakening transforms not just how we see the Anunnaki, but how we see ourselves. We are not random products of blind evolution, but neither are we ordained creations of an all-knowing God. We are experiments, projects, works in progress, created with potential but left to develop on our own. This middle ground might be harder to accept than either pure evolution or pure creation, but it might also be closer to truth. And accepting truth, however uncomfortable, is the essence of maturity. Everything we have explored brings us to this moment. The pyramids stand, the seals hold, the knowledge awaits, and humanity must choose, not just whether to open the chambers, but why we open them. Not just how to use what we find, but who we want to become in the process. The pyramids are not merely monuments or vaults. They are mirrors. What we see in them reflects what we bring to them. If we approach the pyramids with fear, we will find confirmation of our fears. We will interpret every discovery as threat, weapons as danger, knowledge as forbidden fruit, technology as temptation. The guardians will seem like enemies. The Anunnaki will seem like slavers. Our engineered origin will seem like a curse. Fear closes us off from possibility. It makes us defensive, suspicious, unable to receive gifts even when offered freely. If we approach with greed, we will find treasures to exploit. Energy technology becomes monopolized by those who reach it first. Medical advances are patented and sold at prices that ensure profits over healing. Communication devices are weaponized or used for surveillance. Every artifact is evaluated by how much power it grants, how much wealth it generates, how much advantage it provides. Greed transforms knowledge into commodity. It turns exploration into conquest. If we approach with arrogance, we will dismiss what we find as primitive. We will assume that because the Anunnaki are older, their knowledge must be outdated. We will take what seems useful and ignore the rest. We will not ask why they sealed certain things away, assuming we are wiser than they were. We will rush to implement technologies without understanding consequences. Arrogance makes us reckless. It blinds us to dangers and lessons that might save us. But if we approach with humility and wisdom, the pyramids open differently. Humility allows us to recognize that beings who lived for thousands of years, who created life itself, who traveled between worlds, might understand things we do not. Wisdom allows us to ask why before how. Why did they seal this knowledge? Why did they leave? Why did they create us in the first place? Understanding motivations helps us avoid repeating mistakes. Approaching with wisdom also means accepting limitations. We do not need to access everything immediately. We can proceed slowly, carefully, integrating each discovery before moving to the next. We can acknowledge that some knowledge might be better left sealed, not because we fear it, but because we honestly assess that we are not ready for it. Wisdom includes knowing what you do not know, recognizing when restraint serves better than action. The choice extends to how we share what we find. Do the pyramids' contents belong to those who access them first? To Egypt, because the structures stand on Egyptian soil. To all humanity, because the Anunnaki created all of us. To those with Anunnaki genetics, if such bloodlines exist. Each answer creates different futures. Private ownership leads to exploitation. National ownership leads to conflict. Universal ownership requires cooperation that humanity has rarely achieved. Genetic ownership revives the worst aspects of hereditary power. Perhaps the Anunnaki anticipated this dilemma. Perhaps the pyramids cannot be fully opened by any single person or group. Perhaps the seals require cooperation. Different chambers needing different keys held by different peoples. Technology from Giza, combining with knowledge from Stonehenge, combining with artifacts from South America. A global jigsaw puzzle where no one piece suffices alone. This would force humanity to work together, to share, to recognize that we are one species with a common origin and a common future. If this is the design, then the greatest treasure the pyramids offer is not what is inside them, but what we must become to access them. The journey matters more than the destination. The cooperation required to open the seals transforms us from competing nations into a unified civilization. By the time we actually access the chambers, we will have already achieved what the Anunnaki hoped for. We will have matured. The choice also involves timing. Should we push to open the pyramids now, using whatever technology we have, or should we wait until we are more developed, more unified, more prepared? Urgency argues for action. Humanity faces existential threats that might be solved by Anunnaki knowledge. Delay could mean catastrophe, but caution argues for patience. Rushing into chambers we do not understand, triggering guardians we cannot handle, accessing knowledge we cannot integrate safely, these could cause the very catastrophe we hope to prevent. There is no clear answer. Both urgency and caution have merit. Perhaps the solution is middle ground. Continue research, map the chambers, develop access technology, but proceed incrementally. Open outer chambers before inner ones. Test each discovery thoroughly before moving deeper. Build international frameworks for sharing and safeguarding what we find. Treat the pyramids not as a prize to be won, but as a responsibility to be managed. The choice ultimately comes down to what kind of species we want to be. Do we want to be the children the Anunnaki created, obedient workers fulfilling the purpose they designed us for? Do we want to be rebels, rejecting our creators and defining ourselves through opposition? Do we want to be thieves, taking what we can grab without understanding or gratitude? Or do we want to be inheritors, accepting the legacy we were given while shaping it into something new, something uniquely ours? Each path is available. The pyramids do not force us down one route. They offer possibilities. What we choose reveals our character. If we choose poorly, the consequences teach us. If we choose wisely, we grow. Either way, we learn. Either way, we evolve. The Anunnaki might have understood this. They might have designed the pyramids not to protect us from ourselves, but to ensure that our choices have consequences. That we learn through experience, not through being told what to do. This is the deepest gift the pyramids offer. Not specific technologies or historical records, but the opportunity to choose, to step up and claim agency over our own future, to stop waiting for gods to save us or for natural selection to improve us, to consciously, deliberately decide who and what we will become. The pyramids are a mirror, a test, and an invitation. What we see in them, how we respond to them, what we take from them, all of this reveals and shapes our future. The choice is not one humanity makes collectively in a single moment. It is made individually by each person who learns about the pyramids and considers what they represent. It is made by researchers who decide how to pursue their studies, by governments who decide how to regulate access, by media who decide how to present information, by spiritual leaders who decide how to integrate these revelations into their teachings, by each of us who hears the story and asks ourselves, what does this mean for how I live my life? If the pyramids contain proof that we were created by advanced beings, does that change your ethics, your purpose, your relationships, your priorities? Or does life go on essentially unchanged, with this revelation filed away as interesting but not transformative? The answer varies by person. For some, learning about the Anunnaki would be devastating, shattering their worldview. For others, it would be liberating, confirming what they already suspected. For most, it would be somewhere in between, gradually shifting perspectives over time. The pyramids force the question but do not provide the answer. What is the meaning of human life if we were engineered rather than created by God or evolved naturally? The Anunnaki do not answer this. The tablets do not answer this. The sealed chambers, when opened, will not answer this. Because meaning is not something you find. It is something you create. The pyramids remove the easy answers, the comforting myths, the unquestioned assumptions. They leave us free to create our own meaning. And that freedom is the most precious and terrifying gift any being can give another. After everything we have explored, one question remains. What lies behind the final seal? In the deepest chamber, in the most protected vault, what did the Anunnaki consider so important, so dangerous, or so sacred that it required the greatest protection? All the other chambers might contain technology, history, genetic samples, weapons, healing devices. But the final seal, the innermost chamber, the ultimate secret, what could justify such elaborate concealment? Perhaps it contains nothing. Perhaps the final chamber is empty, and the emptiness is the message. All the effort to reach it, all the bypassing of guardians, all the solving of puzzles, leads to a void. The lesson being that the journey matters more than the destination, that the transformation required to access the chamber is itself the treasure, that we were never meant to find external salvation, only internal growth. An empty chamber would be the ultimate Zen koan, the final teaching that we already possess what we seek. Or perhaps it contains a mirror, a device that shows each person who reaches it exactly what they most need to see. For some, it would show technological knowledge. For others, spiritual wisdom. For some, it would show the future. For others, the past. The mirror would be the ultimate personalized revelation, tailored to each seeker's journey. No two people would see the same thing. Each would find exactly what they were ready to receive. Perhaps it contains the Anunnaki themselves. Not all of them left. Some chose to remain, to sleep in stasis chambers, waiting for humanity to mature enough to wake them. The final seal protects these sleeping gods. When we open it, we do not find artifacts but living beings. Beings who will judge whether we are ready for the next phase. Beings who can answer questions the tablets cannot. Beings who will either embrace us as worthy successors or reject us as failures. Or perhaps it contains an egg, the genetic material necessary to recreate the Anunnaki species if they went extinct, or to recreate humanity if we destroyed ourselves, or to create something new, a merger of Anunnaki and human genetics producing a hybrid species that transcends both parents. The egg waits for the right conditions, the right combination of genetic material and environment and timing. When opened, it does not immediately reveal its purpose. It must be understood, nurtured, brought to fruition through conscious effort. Perhaps it contains a map, not a map of Earth or even the solar system, but a map of the galaxy, showing where the Anunnaki came from, showing where other intelligent species exist, showing safe routes through space and dangerous regions to avoid, showing resources, opportunities, and threats on a cosmic scale. With this map, humanity could navigate beyond our solar system. We could contact other civilizations. We could join or create interstellar networks. The map would be our invitation to the larger universe. Perhaps it contains a weapon. Not a destructive weapon, though it could be used that way, but primarily a tool, a device that manipulates fundamental forces of reality, that bends space-time, allowing faster-than-light travel, that accesses zero-point energy, providing unlimited power, that alters probability, making unlikely events certain. Such a tool would be so powerful that even the Anunnaki feared it. They sealed it away, trusting that only a truly mature civilization would access it and hoping that such a civilization would use it wisely. Perhaps it contains a book, a single volume containing everything the Anunnaki knew, their history from the beginning of their species, their science, philosophy, and art, their mistakes and achievements, their hopes and fears, a complete record that would answer every question we could ask and many we have not thought to ask. But the book is not passive. It is interactive, responding to questions, engaging in dialogue, teaching not just facts but understanding. It is the ultimate teacher, waiting for students who are ready to learn. Perhaps it contains a choice, a simple mechanism with two options. One path leads to knowledge that will elevate humanity to cosmic civilization but requires us to leave Earth forever, to scatter among the stars and never return. The other path leads to knowledge that will allow us to perfect life on Earth, to create paradise here, but locks us to this world, preventing us from ever reaching space. We cannot have both. We must choose. And the choice reveals what we value most. Perhaps it contains a warning, a record of what happened to the Anunnaki, why they left, what catastrophe they barely escaped, what enemy they fled from, what mistake they made that they hope we will avoid. The warning is specific, urgent, terrifying. It speaks of dangers we have not considered, threats we do not know exist, but it also provides solutions, if we act quickly enough. The final chamber is not a treasure vault but an alarm, and by opening it, we trigger a countdown. Perhaps it contains a child, a hybrid of Anunnaki and human, conceived before they left, kept in stasis until we were ready to raise it. This child carries the best of both species, the intelligence and longevity of the Anunnaki combined with the adaptability and passion of humanity. Raising this child becomes humanity's test. Can we nurture it without exploiting it? Can we learn from it without worshipping it? Can we integrate it into our civilization as an equal rather than a superior? How we treat this child determines our worthiness. Perhaps it contains ourselves, a quantum device that shows us all possible futures based on all possible choices we might make. We see versions of humanity that ascended to cosmic greatness. We see versions that destroyed themselves. We see versions that stagnated, never leaving Earth, never reaching their potential. We see versions that were enslaved by returning Anunnaki. We see versions that became slavers themselves. Every path is shown. Every consequence is clear. And then we must choose which future to pursue, knowing exactly what each choice leads to. Perhaps it contains a test, one final challenge that cannot be bypassed, a question that has no right answer, only honest ones, a situation that reveals character under pressure, a dilemma that forces us to prioritize values. This test is not about knowledge or capability, it is about who we are at our core, and based on how we respond, the chamber either opens fully, revealing its deepest secrets, or seals permanently, keeping us out until we change enough to pass. Perhaps it contains nothing that can be described in words or images, a presence, an experience, a state of consciousness that cannot be explained to those who have not felt it. People who reach the final chamber are transformed. They return changed in ways they cannot articulate. They speak of having met God, or touched the infinite, or understood the meaning of existence, but they cannot transfer that understanding. Each person must experience it directly. The final chamber is not about acquiring information, but about transformation. Or perhaps, most likely, it contains something we cannot imagine. Something so far beyond our current understanding that our minds cannot grasp it even when told directly. The Anunnaki were thousands of years ahead of us. They had access to knowledge and technologies we have no framework for. What they considered most important might be something we do not yet have concepts for. When we finally open the final seal, we might not even recognize what we are seeing. It might take generations to understand what we have found. This is perhaps the truest answer. The final seal protects not specific objects or knowledge, but the unknown itself, the ultimate mystery, the question that has no answer because the question itself is beyond what we can currently ask. Opening that chamber will not provide closure. It will open new questions. It will expand our understanding of what is possible. It will show us how much we do not know. And that might be the point. The Anunnaki did not seal away the final chamber to keep us out forever. They sealed it to ensure that when we reach it, we have developed enough to appreciate mystery rather than demanding answers. Mature civilizations do not need everything explained. They can tolerate uncertainty. They can explore without requiring guarantees. They can seek knowledge while accepting that some questions lead to deeper questions rather than final answers. The final seal represents the boundary between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is about having answers. Wisdom is about knowing when answers are not enough. A species that reaches the final chamber seeking ultimate answers is not ready for what lies beyond. A species that reaches it seeking deeper questions, better mysteries, more profound wonder. That species might be ready to receive what the Anunnaki left behind. So we stand before the pyramids. The journey through history, through the Sumerian tablets, through the astronomical alignments and genetic mysteries, through the cosmic clock and the waiting guardians, through the choice of who we want to become, all of it leads here, to this moment, to this threshold. The final seal waits. Behind it lies something important, something dangerous, something precious, something we need, something we fear, something we cannot yet imagine. The seal will open when we are ready, not when we have the technology to breach it by force, not when we are desperate enough to try anything, but when we have developed the wisdom to approach it with humility, with patience, with reverence for the mystery itself. When we understand that opening it is not about acquiring power, but about accepting responsibility. When we recognize that what lies beyond is not a gift to be taken, but a legacy to be honored. Until then, the pyramids stand, the seals hold, the guardians watch, the cosmic clock ticks, and humanity continues its journey toward the moment when we will be ready to face what the Anunnaki left behind. That moment approaches. Whether it comes in our lifetime or in some distant future, it comes. The stars align, the chambers wait, and deep beneath the desert sands, in the darkness that has lasted millennia, the final seal remains closed. For now, but not forever. The awakening has begun, the choice is before us, and the final chamber waits for those who are ready to discover what lies beyond.